Okay, welcome everybody. And we have my dear friend Deb Martino, part of the Martino group. Is that team? The Martino team, which is Michael and Deb and Paige Wiggins. And so glad that she is here. You're going to love her. And her office is right down the hall, past mine, last one on the left. They are part of the ownership group, like RJ was of this office. So been here from the beginning, a wealth of experience. They do things the right way, like McCarty's, and values. I just appreciate them so much. They are perfect examples of KW culture, and that we help each other, win-win. So you take everything she says right and take great notes, because this is the way we want you to be when you're out there negotiating. So who's ready? This quiz is not gonna it's not gonna count towards anything. It was just my way of getting you. Yes, please put your notes and your contracts away. To make you read the fine print, so that because why else would you? You know, it's really boring. And then I'll collect these. So let's knock it out 5 minutes, and then at the end I will give you actually this document back with the answer, with the exact terminology from the purchase and sale, so you'll know. Okay, so. Way Danny. Name, I didn't want to mention name, putting your name. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, I think that's everybody, right? All right, Janet, we're not gonna make you take the quiz on purchase and sale agreement. I'd like to take it anyway, just to see what I know. Sure. All right, but Deb is gonna rock and roll, did you get that in?
Get my text and put it on.
I haven't been with my phone, but that's.
I'm here, so-
Why, all right.
Because it was that cemetery one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no cheating, Janet.
That's what I put it on.
Hey, Dad, nice to meet you.
What about the banking days?
Thank you, Stacy.
I got that right.
Hey,
Bible,
come on
what was the
in.
second answer?
Hey, I'm Deb Martino. Perfect timing.
Hey, Chantel.
Started.
You got all this things to get back here.
You have a photographic memory?
I guess, because I got it right.
I just read it in the car. While we come here.
Well, that was perfect. We ate the first frog. Let's get it over with. Take the quiz. Welcome, everybody. My name's Deb Martino. I just have to say, Stacy went above and beyond in my intro, and I will tell you the number one secret to success that I have found for me personally is not to be afraid to fail your way forward. Because every day, and I tell this to my kids, I fail every day because that's how we learn. And it's not a failure if you failed and then you see, how could I do it better? How could I help this person better? What could I have done differently? And that's what I love about this class, negotiations. Negotiations is such a great opportunity to really understand what's important to our clients, what's their motivation, making sure we remember it, can refer back to it, and then help them get from where they are to where they want to be. Because that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be part of a community, in a house that is their retreat. When their tires hit that pavement, they're like, oh, I'm home. And there's nothing like that feeling. And it is so exciting, I think, to be a part of that. And I have to imagine that's why many of you are in this room, to help people build their wealth through real estate, the ultimate goal, and help them find a place where they're going to live and grow and just live their best life. And that's what we're all looking for. Just so you know, for me, I've been a licensed agent since 2008, but I had a fabulous opportunity. My husband started our team, so I started in the 90s doing his behind the scenes. And so this was really back in the day, and this will really date me, but I think it's so funny. We used to type up a flyer and take the photo, tape it on, and then I'd go and make copies of it. So that was really when things were back out of a big book and everything else. So it's been so exciting to see everything change, and I share that because some days I think you just can't help but feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose. It is constantly changing and new stuff is coming out. But I think on the other side of that, that's what makes this such an incredible career choice. Because I will go to events and client parties and be talking to people and they're like, oh my gosh, my job. I'm so bored, I could do it in my sleep, or I'm so unmotivated, or it does not bring me joy. And this job is not like that because you're learning something all the time. There are so many opportunities to learn more, and you're doing something that you can be passionate about. So I just think when I look at all the millions of things out there, if you ever had a desire to help people, to be a psychologist, to be in sales, to nurture, to guide, to navigate, any of those things, you're totally in the right job. And I always like to ask this of everybody, who here has had a job where they felt like they were doing some kind of negotiation? Anybody had any roles? Michelle?
Yeah. I used to sell commercial trash compactors.
So you were out negotiating, how many, how much, things like that?
How big, how much, who, what, when, where, how, and why.
Okay, so you did it all. Awesome.
I was in the medical waste processing business and treatment business. So we sold hospitals in Texas and also Louisiana.
Okay, awesome. You?
I was an operations coordinator, so I had to negotiate with the vendors for better prices and development with nonprofits, so you have to persuade people to donate money.
Perfect.
Network marketing. Yeah. All of them.
Okay. Anybody else have a Janet?
I've been in all different kinds of sales over the years, selling computers, bicycles, owning a restaurant. It's a lot of negotiation.
Anybody else? Have anything else that they've done? This is awesome. So I'm going to expect this to be very interactive because I'm sure there's going to be some times or points that you all have based on your experience. One of the things I enjoy doing about this is, one, it helps me get an idea of where you're coming from, but two, sometimes we'll be in this class and somebody will say, well, I've got to be honest, I've never had a job that I did negotiations. And I'm like, no. First of all, let me ask, you may or may not have known them, but do you have parents? Anybody in here have a parent?
Yeah.
Yes, so if you are a child of anyone's, you are probably among the best negotiators ever on the face of the earth. These guys are incredible. It is amazing to me how you can say, no, that's not a good idea, honey. Oh, can I do this the next day? Can I do it? Can I do it? Can I do it? On and on and on. Hi, come on in. They are relentless in their pursuit of whatever it is they're asking for. They can wear you down for a year and still ask the same thing and still have a big smile on their face. So there is no better negotiator, I think, than a child, because they don't take no for an answer. Anybody have any of these? This to me was always the biggest point of negotiation. Siblings. Siblings, you have to negotiate to basically stay alive when you have siblings. Has anyone purchased something big, like an appliance or a car? Okay. Anybody have kids of their own? Okay, parent. So everybody has, I think, innate negotiation skills, and then what we do is we fine-tune them. So we may have fine-tuned them over the years in different job roles, and if not, we have some great opportunities to fine-tune them now so we can best help our clients. Okay? My goal today is to go over a couple things with negotiations. And again, like I said, this is probably one of my most favorite classes in the Ignite realm, because it brings in so many things that you've already been doing and looking at and kind of helps tie it together and gives you some strategies for really taking care of your clients. So we are going to be looking at negotiation. What is it? What are the common points in negotiation? We're going to watch a video about a gentleman who was looking at negotiation in different frames. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the 3 P's approach. So you know how when you're learning a lot of stuff, they're like, oh my gosh, don't flip out. Think of it as an elephant, and how do you eat it? Everybody remember?
One bite at a time.
Yep, one bite at a time. Well, we're going to look at negotiation in a 3-prong approach when you look at preparing, presenting, and positioning. And those will be the 3 tiers that we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about some strategies and some tips. And if we have time at the end, we're going to go over some role playing and some recapping of everything that we've talked about. Does that sound like a good spot for everybody?
Yes.
Could somebody be our timer? So if we started at 10, we can take a break at 11:30. And if somebody would volunteer to give me the sign at 11:30 because I'll just keep going.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you so very much. So we'll take like a 10-minute break at 11:30 so everybody's time to stretch. And also, if you're somebody that when you're sitting in a chair, you start to nod, please feel free to get up, go to the back of the room. I'd love for you all to be really comfortable because I find when we're comfortable, we're taking in more and we're learning more. The last thing before I start that I'd like to talk about is I look at this class as one more piece in our little red toolbox. So here at Keller Williams, of course I'm going to say it, the greatest company in the world, and quite honestly love this office because we've always jokingly said center of the universe. You can get anywhere from here, and the most beautiful thing about this office is it attracts people from all over. So if you have a client or a listing somewhere and you need some additional information from somebody who lives there and knows it like the back of your hand, you've got all these people you can partner with, all these people you can call and talk to about it, and you're 400, 85, 75, 285, whoosh, and beyond. So center of the universe right here. This is my favorite thing, my red toolbox, because I think as you're learning, there are days that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can retain anymore. And the goal to me going through Ignite is not that you remember every single thing, but that you sit there and say, I sort of remember that was in the negotiation class, or we talked about that in the contract to close. So you know where to go back to it. So you're constantly just throwing things in your toolbox to go back to it. I've got a lot of things in mind. I normally have the red book in here. It's not in here right now, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, because I'm reading it again. Shift when the market changes, some ideas on that. The One Thing, have y'all seen or heard about The One Thing? Such a great book when you're not overwhelmed with reading a lot of this. This is all about figuring out what is the one thing that if you do it, it makes everything else less important and easy. So what's your one thing in your life, in your world? And then of course in our mailroom we have all marketing collateral on our fabulous vendors. These people are here to make your life easier. You know, we've got all of our different home warranty companies, we've got our inspection companies, we've got so much there. And then I really like these magazines. KW puts out a great magazine that really profiles different people across the United States. And what I think is so cool about that is different areas and different regions, as you've heard Brad say in the team meetings, have different markets. So they may be running into something that we haven't run into yet, and you'll hear how are they dealing with this? What are the strategies they're putting in? What's working and what isn't? And that's going to be one of the things that we're going to talk about with the video. And then of course, Know Atlanta. These are great. They're great for you because it talks about all the different counties and what are some of the hot spots. These are in our mailroom as well, and sometimes also in the workroom. But they also go through things that you would probably want to be sharing. So if you have a client and you're going to be in Fulton, there's some great articles on what's going on in Fulton and like tidbits, which I tend to call my cocktail information. You always got to be armed with your cocktail information because when people see you, they're going to say, what's going on in the market? So you need to know the interest rates, you need to know a tidbit, and that leads me to my last point in all this. I think you should always have fun. We've got to always work to have fun, and by having fun, you're going to love what you do. And that is all going to come through as you're out there and you're helping people. Okay, so we talked about how we've got a little background. We all have some different things we're bringing to the table. I think that's going to make it a lot of fun. And we're going to start with, there's some great information in here. And if you don't mind, what I'd love to do is start and kind of go around the room and have everybody read a page as we go through the session today. So if you don't have it, just give me the eyeball. Rochelle, would you mind starting? And can you read, it's my page 9, it says, get your head in the game.
It is my page 9 as well.
Woohoo! It's a good day.
Yeah, we're
What
starting
section
off.
are we in?
We're in Ignite section 10, negotiate the deal.
Section 10, thank you.
Section 10. Now, of course, the front pages are going to be about
Yes, ma'am.
y'all making your calls. What I found in the class is we tend to go through a lot of questions, and it was putting some pressure on people when they're making their calls to shorten the class. So what I'll ask is if it's okay with you all that you make your calls this afternoon, this evening, and that we just work on the class while we're all together. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Sounds great.
Okay, perfect. Take it away, Rochelle.
Get your head in the game. Negotiations are an integral part of most real estate transactions. In fact, they are so important that in a 2014 National Association of Realtors survey of buyers and sellers, negotiations rank second in the list of what buyers want most from their agent, and rank sixth in what sellers want from their agent. As with the offer process, negotiation is a pivotal point. It can literally be the deal maker or deal breaker. Negotiations can actually happen twice during this contract process. First, during the offer phase with the goal of getting a contract. Second, during the option period while under contract with the goal of closing the contract. After investing so much time and energy to move a lead along the way to an agreement and then to a sales contract, do not let a deal fall through now. Your ability to negotiate will directly influence your rate of contracts that close.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know y'all have seen this funnel before about how business works in our 90-day cycle. One of the things in here, well, first of all, this is the same today. 2019 negotiation is always in the top things buyers and sellers are looking for. Sometimes they'll have an idea in their head and they want to hear what your idea is to see if they're on target. And sometimes they'll flat out just say, all right, here's the price. What do you think we should offer? So you are thinking about the tools you're going to need and the data you're going to pull in order to help guide them through that process. And we'll be talking about that as well today. I've always thought there's almost a beginning point of the negotiation. Like in true negotiation, we start when we're offering. When you found the right property, the buyer's excited and they're saying, let's go. Or you're representing the seller and an offer comes in. But I've always felt like negotiation really starts before that point, because how many of you, when you've gone out and talked to people, it just seems to me that everyone I know knows someone in real estate. Has anyone else experienced that? And they have a friend, cousin, brother, somebody in real estate. So the very beginning of negotiation is being very comfortable with who you are, the team that surrounds you, which you all are part of a very large team here, and I would throw that out. Let me go back and run that by with my team. Because no one has ever said, just throw out a horrible answer, I'll go with it. I would rather you check it and then get back to me at 5. Whatever that case might be. So you've got this great team behind you, and those are some of the things that I hope help bring you some confidence when you first start. Because when you're doing anything new, and I don't care what job it is you're like, I rocked my last position, and I knew it like the back of my hand, and then you're like kind of yanked out of that environment to new one, and it's a little bit new and it's a little bit different. But those are the sort of things that are really going to help you. That, and I'm also going to say, if you cannot attend a team meeting, which I love, I miss only a couple a year by circumstances beyond my control. They are always so insightful and good, but because we stream them, you could watch them wherever you are. It is so interesting to hear what comes out, and that is going to be one of your best places for cocktail info, because you're going to be able to come out of that, and it is amazing. The next client you're out with, you're like, oh, I was just speaking with some of my team members, and do you know what happened? Something blah, and it gives you the experience that you are putting together right now, which is those movies. Like with your old job, you could have played a movie for hours. You knew everything about it. Now with the new job, you're creating and you're saving those movies, and those are based on your experiences. Build them through the information that comes out in the team meetings, build them through the classes and the materials, and from there. So that's really going to help during your negotiation of the offer phase, and while you're under contract, meeting all the deadlines and all the things that could possibly come up and being prepared for them. Okay? All right, making it happen, negotiations on page 10. Clip, would you be willing to read that page?
You may not realize it, but you are almost always negotiating. When there is something that you want, that new car for the price you want to pay, For your friend to see your point of view in an argument, or for your child to do the dishes, the truth is that whatever you want is often owned or controlled by someone else. The way to get what you want is through negotiation. Bargaining, give and take process begin two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. In real estate, negotiations occur between agents and between agents and their clients.
You know, and every state is different, but here we talk with our client and then we get together with the other agent and share the data. The clients don't talk to each other, and we don't talk with the other person's client, so we keep it like that. And when you think about it, and you think about it from like that big picture standpoint, it's sort of interesting how this even unfolds and works, because when you have a seller, what do you think the seller's thinking about their proproperty?
It's the best on the planet.
Oh my gosh, the castle, it's perfect. It doesn't matter if it is like hermetically sealed from 1965. It is updated, the appliances are like brand new, and it's beautiful, which they should feel like that. God bless you, that's awesome. And then what do you think the buyer's thinking?
It needs work, it
Yeah.
needs to be updated, I gotta fix this and that.
Absolutely. Oh my, we've got so much to do to bring it up to where I want it. And then our goal, working with the other agent, is to take these two people that are so far apart to get them together, but even better, to get them together at the closing table where you have a seller excited to pass over the keys and sell, a buyer happy to buy, and people excited to share information about the community and the neighborhood. And that's where how you do your negotiations to help your client really shines through. And I always laugh. Sometimes I hear somebody talking about somebody, oh, so-and-so, man, they're a pit bull. They go in there and they go for the jugular and they get it done. Well, that sounds so cool. When you hear it, you're just like, ooh, wow.
Right.
However, when you're in a situation where there's two parties, if you're not working to help everybody win and feel good about the transaction, it's going to come back. You know, when you work with the pit bull, you start to see, when you follow, how many things fall out of contract. You start to see where the client wants to close in a separate room by themselves because they don't want to see anybody in the transaction. That will happen. You start to see all these things and you realize, well, you know, when you play by a different rule book that's not like kind of following that thing we learned in kindergarten, that golden rule, it does come back to you. And I think with negotiation, it's so huge, especially when you think about it this way. Someone is trusting us with their largest investment. It's like, oh my. I mean, because for most people, this is the biggest investment that they're out there making. So we want to feel very comfortable and confident helping them navigate that process. And that's where a lot of these skills are going to come in. So we're going to take a little minute and watch a video of a gentleman, Josh Anderson. Grew up on a farm, and he's going to talk about one negotiating tactic, because there's so many of them. But has anyone heard about the escalation clause?
Yes.
You've heard that, great. So escalation clauses came out a lot during shifts in the market and changes, and then when we're rising up and suddenly there's a lot of people looking for a limited inventory. Sort of like right now, in certain price points, you've got buyers ready to buy, but not a lot of homes listed for sale in January, February, March. So you hear a lot of stories of people going out. The house might have even been sitting for 2 months. They put an offer in, poof, 3 other people are putting an offer in. So this is one of the tactics that was put together to help people with during an escalation to win the bid. So let's see if we can get this right.
Do we need to turn off the light?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Let me make sure I got the volume good here. Is it this one? Yeah, that would be, I think if we even just hit the front, I think you'll be able to see it a lot better.
No.
It's not that
This is
big.
another
It'll be
light.
on the back.
Oh,
Okay,
perfect.
there we
Thank you. All right, let me show you here.
I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. In 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in book. I grew up on a farm, so I've always seen my dad negotiating land and cows and horses, being the youngest of four, and I'm trading and negotiating with my brothers all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. Some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I think that negotiation can definitely be learned.
Yay!
I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a great negotiator. I think it's learning your client. Instead of kind of assuming that you know what's important to them, really asking a lot of questions and letting them tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give any. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, you'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to help our clients out and win the deals. One of the techniques that we've used a lot that's worked well for us is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000, we might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. From a client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with your clients. It's not us just being realtors for them, it's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they would negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear it, the more ideas you get. And then you end up gearing it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
Awesome. So what did you hear in that?
Listen.
Anybody have an aha of any sort based on what he was talking about, or
Listen.
any tips? Listen.
Listen, get to know your clients.
Get to know your clients.
What are they looking for?
I like keep asking questions.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions. I love that, keep asking questions, especially because so many times when you ask somebody the first time, you get this answer. And then you ask it a different way and a little something will come out. So those going 3 deep and always, well, I hear you want to go to Florida, but what will happen if you don't? What if we missed that timeline? What would happen if we made that timeline? What else is important to you about going to Florida? Oh, well, I got grandkids there. Oh, okay, that's why you want to go to Florida. And if you're not there at that time, what's going to happen? Well, I'm not going to be there to help get them into school, and that's going to really cause problems for my daughter. And then blah blah. It just, you keep peeling it back, and it will really help you to understand your client better, what's important to them, and what you need to keep focused on as you work through the transaction. And then when you understand what they're looking for, I think the hardest part when you're negotiating is it becomes so emotional for the buyer and the seller. And then our job is to, take that emotion hat off and be the person who's able to say, okay, let's put everything on the table and let's take a look. Here's what they're offering, or here's what is coming in. What do you feel? Like, what is if you're a buyer, what's the dollar amount that you would pay for the house that if you were to pay $1 more, you would say, oh my gosh, I overpaid. So that's a great question when you're walking through houses and maybe somebody says, oh my God, I'm thinking this might be the one, I love it. Especially today with inventory and some price ranges being lower, you want to kind of start thinking about that and putting that seed in their head if there's going to be multiple people coming out saying this is a great house. Yes, ma'am.
In Monday's class with RJ, she talked about like writing a letter to say how much you love the house. And for example, when I saw my house in Maryland, we were in that same situation. We had an escalation clause and we had 2 contracts. They both hit that number, and so we had to choose between 2 contracts. But fortunately, we had met one family. They actually, came late and we were back in the house. So we saw how much they loved the house. And so we chose that couple just because we knew that they really loved the house. Now the other couple may have, but we had no way of knowing that, so that's who we went with.
That is a fabulous strategy because it shares some information about the people, and for a lot of sellers, because think about it, if you're representing the buyer, you don't know the seller.
Right.
They may have an emotional connection that they want to hand the house over to somebody who loves it like they did. That's very, very important for a lot of people. We've had in somebody between 2 houses, and then they picked our listing because of the seller's letter. So we do the same thing on the listing side where the seller it's an opportunity for them to soft sell why this is the best house, how they found it, what they loved about it. We've spent all this time in the backyard hosting events. We've done this with our kids. We like to have a cup of coffee in the morning looking out at the trees on the back deck. So they can soft sell all these things. It keeps the buyer in the house for a minute more reading the seller's home letter, and then it kind of helps them to see, wow, I could have this kind of life too. Because sometimes you walk in the house and it's all decorated, strong and maybe very different than your buyer's tastes, and they're having a harder time just pulling back and looking at the structure and thinking, how would I live here? And that's a great way. So thank you for bringing that up. The buyer letter is huge for a lot of people. Now I've also had buyers, and the agent said, yeah, I got your buyer letter, but didn't even look at it. I don't care about that, and I don't think my client will either. I said,
Wow.
I'd love for you to show it to them, but I understand. You know your client best. And you're like, "Damn." But it's a great opportunity to put your client in the best light. Okay.
Oh, really?
Something else Josh said was sometimes you have to be creative on the deal. So we're always thinking outside the box. How do we make this work? Escalation clause became so popular when the market started going back up. It is a great thing, and anytime you're in a multiple offer is the perfect way to move forward. Consulting and advising your client. Learning from other KW agents. That's one of the reasons I love Outfront Magazine. Tons of videos and podcasts on KW Internet and the U that you can listen to people all over the United States, what they do and what they do best. And then we're just about to have Family Reunion is in February, and that's our once a year convention. Fabulous thing to attend at least once in your life. It is amazing. I wouldn't do it right now because you'd be like, whoa, this is so much information, but maybe next year. But what's great about it is they will take the PowerPoints and put them up on the internet so that we can all see them. And then Gary's State of the Market speech, you want to talk about some great cocktail information. They'll stream it here, and then we're going to get the copies of the slides. So it's like the stats that we use that you can add into your presentations that really set you apart and show people you understand the market and what's going on, because you are, the financial person and the local market economist understanding those slides. So those are 2 other things that will help you in your creativity. All right, page 12 is negotiating tips. These are kind of like the golden rules of negotiating. Tom, do you mind reading this page?
Negotiating tips?
Yes, sir. Page 12.
Keep the following tips in mind as you work toward mastery in negotiation. I guess number 1, above all else, be professional. Number 2, remember your goal, a signed contract. That is what you're driving towards, and it's what both agents and their clients have in mind. Number 3, control what you say to annoy to anyone involved in the transaction. If you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you are reducing their leverage in negotiations. Number 4, continually refer back to motivation. Remind your client why they want to buy or sell, and help them reevaluate the request if they are becoming unreasonable. 5, Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. And then 6, don't be attached to the outcome. You'll do hundreds or thousands of transactions in your career, and there's no way you can get everything your clients want all the time. Don't let it affect your mindset if a deal doesn't go through, or if your client doesn't act on your recommendation. Find different wins for your client.
Did anything in here speak to anybody, or anybody have any questions on any of these kind of golden rules?
Yes, listen more than you talk. I'm gonna have to practice that. I like to talk. I like to listen, but not as much as I like to talk. So I'm gonna have to practice that. I know that about myself.
And I think that is huge, because I will admit I am the exact same way. I will tell you, I was born in a military family, so we lived all over. I talked so fast that when I were transferred and I moved to Florida, people could not understand me. Plus, being Italian, I tend to talk with people. So I was like, ah! People were like, what? What's she saying? You know, because nobody knew what I was talking about. It was so frustrating. So I had to go to a speech therapist to learn how to slow down. And it was such, well, it was horrible for me, you know, as in college going, oh, I can't believe I have to do this. But it was such a great life experience, because it showed me that you can learn and mirror and match anybody. And that mirror and matching, when you're sitting with somebody, if you're talking fast and they're talking slow, they're not going to connect. And there have been times in my life where I actually had to just kind of almost sit on my hands or put them, because I knew they were going to start flying. So until you get it, you hit the nail on the head there, Rochelle. You can be anyone you need to be to best help your client. And that's all part of throwing these different skills in that toolbox and learning to come up with the best way to extract information from them to help them better, and to share information back is wonderful. That's why one of the best, past career areas for a real estate agent is people who have in their past job done any sort of teaching or been a teacher, because a teacher takes the time to sit with the client and say, all right, here's what's happening next. Here's what you need to do. Here's what we're expecting. And if you end every conversation with your client with, Colette, here's what's going to happen next. I would expect them to call, and then blah, 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 it just goes like that. Then they leave every conversation with you feeling like, okay, here's what's coming up next. I kind of know what the plan is. I know what we're going to do. I know what to expect. And if you think about it, most of the time when we feel very uncomfortable in a situation, it's because we don't know what is coming next. We don't know what to expect. So if you can eliminate that for your clients by saying, here's what's happening next, or whatever way you like to say that, that's going to make a huge difference. And it's also going to show them that you're already prepared and thinking about the next step. Take away that anxiety and help them move forward. So listen more than talk, which kind of ties back into the asking the questions and asking them in different ways so you get more information. They do mention in here referring back to motivation, because sometimes when somebody gets very emotional, which is their job to do, because this is a huge investment for them, and it's our job to be unemotional, they forget, well, I'm not going to give them that mirror over the fireplace. Said Deb Martino one time. I'm going to tell you, my husband had to say, Ms. Seller, I could buy you another one of those mirrors. Because you're like, I can't believe they're asking for all my personal property. But then, on the other hand, oh my gosh, they loved her house and they were buying her house. So I got over it. And that was such a great experience for me, because I was like, like exactly how our people feel. So that's the other thing. I'm going to tell you, you need to move every couple years, whether you need to or not, because it's going to keep it real. No, I'm not really saying you have to move over here. But it is such a great experience, because I'll talk to somebody and they'll be like, oh my God. And they'll be an agent or a stager, and they'll say, I just moved last week. I said, how'd it go? It was amazing, because it was horrible. And I said, isn't it the greatest experience? Because it helps you remember what our clients are going through. So when you go to sell your house, on TV they make it just sound like, oh, I just put my house on the market, I got 45 deals, oh, everything's easy and great. But it's like probably the biggest mental, emotional, and physical event you're doing. You're tired in all three areas. You are exhausted. So we want to do things that are going to help people to feel comfortable and confident moving forward, and to take away some of that stress so that you can really help them get to where they want to be. They've raised their hand and said, I want to do something, so we need to help them get to where they want to be. Selling, upsizing, downsizing, buying, whatever it is. I love this one at the bottom as well. Don't be attached to the outcome.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is. A couple of years ago, somebody was sitting in here and they were like, oh, something happened, it didn't work out, and they were like, oh, that was X amount of money, and this is what it's going to do, and now all these horrible things are going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I just find it all is going to work out. And if you start focusing on the commission, you are going to realize really quick this is not a job that's going to bring you joy. Because when you focus on doing the right things and helping people, the rest will come and the rest will be there. And there's going to be times where you do absolutely everything to the best of your ability and right, and it's still not going to work out. And those are the best times to sit down with somebody, maybe with something stronger than tea or coffee, and just say, okay, here's what I did. I'm wondering, is this something I missed? Is this something I missed? What would you have done differently? And you hope to gain something from it, one little tidbit. And sometimes there's no tidbits, so just know that. Sometimes someone in the transaction had a change of heart, or something changed in their life you might not ever know about, and everything's done. So that's why being attached to that outcome is and also sometimes the people that change their mind are the ones that come back based on how you handled it, And even with buyers and sellers, we've had buyers who were crestfallen when their offer did not get accepted. And two things seem to happen. One, you find something else, and they're like, oh my, I am so happy I didn't buy the last one. This one is perfect for me. So when a buyer is totally devastated because they lost a house, because you feel like it was almost yours, so therefore you lost it, you always know, hey, do not worry, we are going to find you something. And I would say like 95% of the time, we always find something that they're more excited about. And the same thing with the seller. We're going to find the right one to buy the house. We're going to find them. So bear with me. We're trucking along, and we're going to make this happen. All right. So from the negotiating tips, one of the things that came out was asking a lot of questions, and this is something that I am stymied that doesn't happen more. So you're representing a buyer, and you found the house. What is one of the first things when you come back that you're going to do? You're like, well, I think I want to write an offer. Let's get it together.
Comps.
So you feel comfortable what's going on. Okay, and you've checked the tax record. You've gotten all your data. You've looked at the stats. Who is a good person to talk to?
A broker.
Okay, maybe get some more advice if you're not sure.
Selling
Or
agent.
want another agent. Selling agent. It is amazing to me how many people do not call the listing agent. So we call them 2 times, and I'm sure you heard this in your showing class. We call them when we're showing property. The reason is sometimes people lag on their changing of the status. It's supposed to be 48 hours. It doesn't always happen. And there is nothing more upsetting than bringing your buyer out and they're doing the happy dance and you find out it's already under contract. So we used to call and just say, is the house available? But everyone says yes. So then the second question became, are you currently working on any offers? So in other words, the house is available, technically 100%, but somebody's put in an offer and maybe their seller's thinking about it and ready to counter back. So always find out before you go out, are y'all working on any offers? Because then at least you know and you can say to your client, we can go look. They said they're not close, but they are working another offer, so you know that. The second time from the beginning that I think you talk to the agent, which so many people don't do, is when you're about to put in an offer. Wouldn't it be great to call them and say, hey, it's Deb Martino, Keller Williams Realty, how are you doing? Thank you so much. And thank you to your seller for letting us in today at 2. we went out through the house. Appreciate all the feedback you gave me when I called and the information on the house. Our client is very interested. So do you have a moment that I could ask you a couple questions? Maybe there's a couple things you want to confirm. And then a great question for them is, other than price, what are some things that are important to your client? Other than price, what are some things important to your client? Because of course, if you say what's important, everyone is going to say, oh, they want 20,000 above the list. Well, of course, that's what we all want for our clients. But other than price, so many people don't call. They don't even get to asking that point. Wouldn't it be great for your client to know what's important? Well, maybe they're an elderly couple and they're waiting on a space in a retirement home. And they think something's coming up in a month, but they're not sure. Well, maybe saying we're flexible with the closing date or we'll allow a rent back. You will find things out. You might find out that they've got a family member who needs something, and that can be tied in. There's just so many different things that will come up with dates, times, money, and everything else. So other than price, what is important? And that's going to lead us into the common points of negotiation. And what I really like to do in this section is pull out your very favorite quiz piece, the purchase and sale agreement. So I'm going to pass it. You can pass those around. And we're going to talk about some of the key areas on the purchase and sale and some of the ways you could use them for your benefit, your client's benefit in negotiation versus just looking at them as static, that this is what it is. So in the common points of negotiation, they go through every section on the purchase and sale. What I love about the purchase and sale is years ago, data was all throughout. You ran out? Okay, I do. Who still needs
Four
one?
more is what we need, I think.
All right, you get my special ones because I didn't know how many people were coming. Who were? So you can actually write notes on this. All right, here you go.
Thank you.
Yes, my big ones. They came out in that long. You're like, why is the picture so big?
Thank you.
So with the common points of negotiation, what we're going to be doing is talking about some of the ways you might negotiate with these particular items based on what your buyer needs, based on what you hear about a seller, depending on who you are representing. So we're going to go through each one at a time. So common points of negotiation. During the negotiation process, price and terms are the common points. That's what everybody thinks of price when you talk about negotiating. So number one is price. Ralph, can you read to us what they say about the price?
While the sale is a primary factor in the negotiations, it is not necessarily the bottom line. In a situation where a seller receives multiple offers at the same price, it is the terms of those offers, in addition to the buyer's financial position, that will determine which one wins.
So you could have somebody offer a higher price, but based on other things they're asking for, that price is coming so far down that it looks great, but then you realize it's the lowest offer of all of the ones you've received. So the terms and what they're asking for are the most important things to be able to analyze. So when we look at the terms, Ralph, can you continue on here?
The terms of an offer may be financial or time-based, or both. When the buyer and the seller can't agree on a sales price, the following 5 offer terms come into play. First, closing costs. Traditionally paid by the buyer. Closing costs are in addition to the purchase price. Securing the cash to pay these expenses can be difficult for some, especially for first-time home buyers. Therefore, the seller may be asked to pay a portion of their closing costs. When you represent a seller, make your client aware that it's common for buyers to ask for part of the closing costs to be covered by them and what part that options are.
Perfect. If I could ask you to stop for a second. All right, let's take a look at our purchase and sale. All right, section 1, I put a little star there because if you don't fill out section 1, you're not buying anything that's valid. So the property address, if you go somewhere and something looks off, go on the United States Postal Service, USPS.com, and verify the address. If somebody has the wrong city, the zip code, like you're in 30331 and all of a sudden it's 347, you're just like, what? Where did this come from? Double check it. But even more important than the address, MLS number, and the tax parcel ID, does everybody remember where to find the tax parcel ID in FMLS?
Yes.
Okay, great. In the tax record, you pull it up and see it. It's the legal description. So our attorney partner, Yannick, will help you and pull the legal description. So what's important about the legal description? Does anybody remember what the legal description looks like?
Lot, block, and plat number.
It's all that lot, parcel, tract of land, and this lot, and blah, blah, blah. It makes sure that if you're representing the buyer, they think they're buying is really what they're buying. And if you're representing the seller, that you're selling the right house. So important. And it's something you'll see a lot of people skip, or they look at it in the tax record and try to fill it in themselves, putting the numbers in the wrong spots. We subscribe to the service so we can print it ourselves, and I would say don't do that now. When you have something, shoot an email over to Gannick and say, hey, can you help me and pull the legal description for this address? And then they'll send it to you, and then you can have everybody sign it. So basically it says, we all agree that this is what we're talking about here, so there's never confusion. And you wouldn't think that would be an issue, but where I've heard it becomes an issue is already through. Everybody's happy. We're almost to closing. They've been watching. Something was wrong up there, and they said, oh, our contract's null and void because this data is wrong. So you don't want to have any little loophole left open. You want things to be really tight. And when you send an offer, that's why it's so good. We have multiple people in here to help and to verify everything, because you want your offers to be airtight. Because in a multiple offer situation, you're looking at all these offers, and when they're loosey-goosey and things are not complete and forms are not attached, first thing you're thinking is, this is how this whole transaction is going to go. So in the little notes, when we do our evaluation, before we sit down with the client, that's going to be in there. It's like, hey, they didn't include the seller's disclosure, which we've attached in FMLS. They didn't include the community association disclosure. They didn't fill out X, Y, and Z. They missed a lot of spaces on the purchase and sale and left them blank. You don't leave them blank. They're there because they're required. And what I was going to say earlier is, in one of the rewrites, they took all of the meat, the most important things in the contract, and put it on page 1. It was like, hallelujah! Everything we need is here until we get to page 7, which we're going to go over next, and just make sure we're all together on that, how that can really help us in negotiation. But everything we need is right here. So they made it so easy. And then in between, it's all this incredible reading for your clients, especially who like to know everything, because it supports each section. What does it mean? How does it work? What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? That's why it's so important to read it, because this is what we look at, touch, and do every day. Every year, there's a change to these forms. Typically, it's going to be January, and then it's in the summer, like around June. We always do an overview here of what change you want to come to those or watch them, because then you'll know exactly what's happening in the forms, and they change the forms based on what's easier, what protects our buyers and our sellers more, and then where are the areas that there's been a lot of problems over the year. You know, have people misunderstood something? Have there been any legal ramifications? What's come up, and then how to do it? So the legal team works very, very hard on this. That's why we do not need to rewrite any of this. This is all good. Okay, so we beat the horse of why you've got to have a great legal description and protect yourself. Purchase price of property to be paid by buyer. So this is the biggest question when you're representing the buyer. What is the price that you're willing to pay, that if you paid $1 more, you'd feel like I paid too much? And that's something only they can answer. You can come in with the comps. Here's the last 4 sales in the neighborhood. Here's what's going on in the area. We're seeing, a 4% increase in this area year over year for the past 3 years. You can pull the stats that our statistician puts together and say, here's what's going on. You can look at how many people are paying closing costs in that neighborhood, how many sellers did, so you can say average closing cost is about $2,000. This guy paid $5, this one paid none, this one paid $3. You can have all this information, but it's got to come down to where does the buyer feel most comfortable. The most interesting thing about the property value is we don't make the property value. I have in our office a crystal ball. I rub it all the time, and yet I'm not getting the answer. You wait for that lightning bolt.
Right.
Come on, tell me. Who makes the values?
The buyer.
Buyers. So the market dictates the values. The market makes the values, and it's our job to take all that information and interpret it. And sometimes it's a hard conversation, Mr. Seller, the buying public, here's where they are, and this is what the values are perceived to be right here, right now. Because if you price it too high, it's going to affect their bottom line. They're going to sit too long. They're not going to sell. People are going to think, what's wrong with this property? Same thing with the buyer looking at the house saying, well, I love the house, but I really want to pay off my student loans and I'd like to go on a vacation this year, so I don't want to pay that. I need to pay this. Okay. Well, those things don't come into play. We need to look at the hard facts of the house. How solid is it? What's going on in the neighborhood, in the area, and then come up with a price. And so the purchase price can be a flat number, or it could be like an escalation clause if you're worried about other people coming in. So that, of course, is the number one when you say negotiation that everybody thinks of, the purchase price. Now, the closing costs, years ago, nobody paid closing costs. There was no closing costs. The closing costs were paid by the buyer as part of their loan. The sellers did not pay them. So everything's going great. We're in 2007, the height of the market, rocking and rolling, and then we started to go down and things started happening. Well, all these sellers had houses that were sitting. People were losing their jobs. So many horrible things. The houses were going into foreclosure. So what they had to do was say, what can I do to make my house more attractive? So they started advertising. All of a sudden, in FMS, you'd see seller willing to pay $3,000 a buyer's closing costs. It's like, whoa, never saw that before. And it became more and more prevalent. And so that was the beginning of sellers helping to pay the closing costs. And then as times changed and the market became great again, everyone was used to getting closing costs, so now they want the seller to pay closing costs. But when you think about it from a seller's standpoint, they're going to look at the purchase price, they're going to subtract the closing costs, because this is the bucket they're interested in, what's my net. Then they'll look and see if you ask for anything else, but that's the two biggest numbers, what's my net. So you could offer above list, but then if you have a lot of closing costs, you have to remember they're subtracting that out. And the closing costs, depending on the client, you might need to, if the area is appreciating and you feel comfortable that the price is not going to be too high, you could bump their closing costs by bumping the price up and then still having closing costs. You can, if they're comfortable paying their closing costs, put 0. There are so many ways for you to work with the closing costs, but know from a seller's standpoint, they're always going to look at the price minus the closing costs, because that's going to be what their net is. All right? So now, Ralph, could you go back and do a closing date for us?
Okay. When the seller has a very specific time frame for moving, the buyer has the upper hand and can leverage this by being more flexible with the closing date and less flexible with the offer price.
So that's why that call to the other agent, if you're representing the buyer, thanks so much, and if you don't mind if I ask, what, other than price, is most important to your seller? You're going to get that kind of information of what's going on in their world and how can you frame the offer that your client, your buyer, gets what they want, but it also helps the seller. We had a deal years ago where the woman packed up all her stuff, moving truck came, went to the closing. This wasn't our closing, and the buyer had vanished. So her house is empty, her utilities are turning off at the end of the day, all her stuff's in a moving truck, she had nowhere to go. So it completely marred her, as you would imagine. So she was like, I will never move out of my house before closing. And I found that out in that call. And I said, okay, thank you so much for sharing that. So I said, is she looking to stay in the house like an extra week? Is that something that would make a difference for her? And they're like, oh my God, that would be huge. So we went back and talked to her buyers, because you always like it to be finished at the closing table. Here's the keys, we've already checked it, it's good. But you can put in some safeguards in place so your client, as the buyer, is protected. So you do your normal walkthrough before closing. Did anything crazy happen? Did a pipe burst? Is it still the same house that you thought you wanted to buy? All good. Then you're gonna go back when that week is up, and you do a temporary occupancy agreement, so it's like a rental, so you're covered. Because think about it, who has the insurance on that house?
I do, the new buyer.
The new buyer. So the tree falls on the house. Does anyone hear it? Yes. And who hears it? Your buyer, but they're not in the house. So they're going to have to pay for it. So the temporary occupancy agreement talks about how all that will work. It also gives you the opportunity at the end of that week, and I always like to have the other agent there as well, to do another final walkthrough, because the house looks so different when the stuff is out. And you're always wanting to see, did they accidentally drop a dresser down the stairs and there's a big hole? Did they pull something across the hardwoods? Because it's life, things are going to happen. So you go through and you check all that, and everybody signs off. You could even do move in, move out, which is what you do with a rental. It's a whole sheet on all the rooms where you say, here's stuff we know is already, like there's a big stain in the carpet in the middle of the family room, so nobody brings that back up. Then you get everybody back together and make sure everything's completed. Yes, Tom?
I'm in a situation right now where I've listed a property in Canton this past weekend. I listed it at about 11 o'clock on Saturday, had 6 showings. 2 offers, and then another agent called, and all the other agents, hey, will you accept this offer? I said, absolutely not. It would behoove my client to do that, because I want final, I want a multiple offer situation. And so the client, really good agent called and said, would you accept an offer? I said, absolutely I would. Here's what my client's looking for. Their house that they're selling currently is contingent. They're making an offer on another house, and that financing is contingent upon them selling their house. So I need a quick close. My client needs a few days, in the house. A month would be awesome if we could get that. And we're definitely not going to accept anything that's not well above asking.
Okay.
So I had the house listed at 170.
Okay.
So she said, okay, I'll get it done. I can close in 7 days. And I said, well, they don't need to close that fast, but that would be awesome if you could get something done like that. So she sent me an offer, $185. Seller pays $5,000 in closing costs. We had the property listed at $170, and they're closing in 10 days. A 5-day due diligence.
Okay.
I'm like,
Beautiful.
I mean, we absolutely. And then a girl called me back the next, and we accepted it. And a girl called me back the next day and said, well, I thought you weren't accepting things. I said, no, I told you that unless you're going to be above asking, there's no way I would accept it.
You couldn't do it. Yeah, it's, the most heartbreaking thing to me is we were such huge proponents of first-time home buyers and supporters, and when you're looking in properties 200 and under, they more often go multiple offer, and so often go, this may not have been a case in this one, but they would go to an investor, and you're like, you hear these stories, oh, it's a single mom or a single dad, and they really need this, and yet you have to do what's best for your seller. The only thing I would throw out on that, Tom, because I'm not sure, you may have done this, and I could have missed that in the story. When it's multiple offer, I'm always, I'm going to say almost paranoid, because you want to keep everything equal for everybody. So, like in a multiple offer, when we get it, we alert everybody by phone, and then I email everybody and say we're in multiple offer. I've also seen where in the multiple offer, afterwards in that email, you share, hey, just want to let you know, thank you so much for your offer. We are in a multiple offer situation. I'm reaching out to everyone that has submitted an offer, one, to thank you and your client for your time, so then they have something they can send to their client and say, we are in a multiple offer. Martina's just sent this over. Because sometimes they wonder, like, is it really a multiple offer? How can this be? No one was looking at this house. And then secondly, you could say, I would at this point like to share, here's a couple things really important to our seller.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. And, I've also seen where people have said our seller is asking that, you know, anything over the list price, if it doesn't appraise, you pay for that. You know, there's all different ways to frame that, and then you throw it out to everybody to see what they do, and you always reference it. The seller is asked. You know, sometimes maybe the seller's unavailable till Monday. If you have a hot property and you know it's gonna have multiple offers, and you know they're gonna need time to like get it all together, and you to put it together, just say the seller will be evaluating all offers on Monday. So that gives you that whole weekend to get through. So you're not, you know, flooded with calls, panicked, and not doing the right thing by them.
What's crazy is people were making offer on that house sight unseen. You know, I'm like, holy cow.
Because they were people, or were they investors? I'm
No,
curious.
well, both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so after we'd accepted, I got 3 more offers. So I've got 6 total offers.
Mm-hmm.
An investor, you know, so I was just like, holy cow.
Yeah. And it's hard because there are
Super hot
companies
neighborhood.
that will reach out to you where their buyer agent is just looking on the internet all day, and as soon as they see something, they just shoot out a generic offer, maybe a little bit above ask price, and they haven't seen it. And then during due diligence is when they come out, look at it, see if there's anything
Yeah.
amiss. So, you know, one of your questions, and that was very astute to notice that, is to say, have you seen the property? Because it makes you a little bit uncomfortable if they haven't seen the property yet. You know, do you really know what you're bidding on here? So there's a lot of little pieces that come together in a multiple offer, and kudos for evaluating everybody, because it is a lot of work. It's a big spreadsheet going through the offers. I like to go old school. I print them all out, because when you have so many and I'm looking on the screens, I'm like, which one's which? I've got them all stacked. I've got a spreadsheet, and then I put all of this terms, all of these down across the top so I can write them in. Then you'll put in what else is important. Special steps, what have they asked for? Boom, boom, boom. Then I'll ask, what kind of financing are they doing? Is it 100%? Is it 95? Is somebody putting 20% down? Ooh, they're really solid. What are they up to? And then who is the lender? And in a multiple offer, something else you can do is reach out and call all the lenders. Hey, Deb Martino with Keller Williams, how are you? Hey, we have a listing. It's at blah, blah, blah street. Do you have a moment to speak with me about your mortgage client, Jane Jones? So James is one of 6 offers we've received on that property. I know that you cannot share anything confidential, nor would I want you to, but I'd just like to find out, is there anything you could share that would help me to share some information with our seller to make them feel more comfortable and confident moving forward? And they might say, well, Jane has been awesome in turning in anything we need. Anything we need, boom, we have it the next day. She's been in her job for 15 years. She's very stable, and she's well qualified for this property. Thank you. Go down the list. You're gonna come up with somebody who you're not feeling it for, and that's just one more thing for you to share with your client. I know the offer sounds great. However, when I called the lender, I noticed they were only putting 4% down, and I didn't get that feeling. You know, obviously the final decision's up to you, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, but here's another piece of information. So you're almost like, like forensic realtors.
Detective.
You are. You're looking people up online, you're calling the lender, you're getting information, especially in that multiple offer, so you can do the legwork for your client and sit down and say, here are all the offers, let's go through each one and take a look. And then you want to send them a copy of each offer so you're covered, so that they have that opportunity if they want to go through them all. Okay, thank you for bringing that up, Tom, because multiple offers are a very interesting and unique animal, but it's doing what you would normally do, but doing it times 6. And was anybody in the team meeting on Tuesday? So Hank was showing in command how you just can put in all the facts of the offers. You've got them all stored there, and now it's making a spreadsheet. And what I love about
That
that
was awesome.
is all the basic data is there, and then you could hit the export into like Excel or something, and then add your own columns that you want, and just have this big spreadsheet. Where in the past, you typed up the spreadsheet, put all the columns here, all there. It's so wonderful. You have everything in one place. So that, for me, is like one of the most exciting things, that multiple offers are not gonna take you all that time to analyze. You're gonna be able to print it out and see everything right there.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does Georgia have like a memo to buyer form that you send out, or do you just do it by email when you have a multiple offer?
I don't think there is a multiple offer form that's a standard. We'll check that on the break, but that's a great question. I don't think there is. That's why we
Every
always.
state's different. North
Yeah.
Carolina had one, South Carolina didn't.
Yeah, I
you
don't
know,
think
so-
we do. I think we always do the phone call and then the follow-up email. And again, the email's for two things. One, to say if there's anything that we need to share, and then when our deadline is going to be. You've got all the who, what, where, when, and why, but also thanking them for their time in the offer so that they can show their client we are definitely multiple offer. We're working with a client now that we've run into like 3 different multiple offer houses, and her question was, how do I really know it's multiple offers? And there was one. It was one of the companies that purchases your home and resells it, and I'm not saying anything bad because I think there is a client and a company for everything based on your needs and what you need done. But this house had been sitting there for 6 months, and we called them and got the offer, and then the next day it was like, oh, by the way, we got another offer. Things didn't work out in the end, and the house is still sitting there today. And then I ran into somebody else who said, isn't that interesting? Because I put an offer in, and that night I got a call, we were multiple offers. So of course you're like, oh, note to self.
Right.
Possibly with this company, they work to help get everyone really excited and drive the price up. I don't have proof because when we said our escalation clause, we would pay X amount higher than your highest offer up to the ceiling. We got an email back, oh, we don't provide copies of the other offer. Oh, very interesting. Because that's what drives your price up, and you need to be able to show that to your client to say, here is the valid other offer that came through in this multiple offer.
Do you put in the special steps, like, a copy of the, offer redacted, so that
There are some
you can prove?
great multiple offer steps, and we have this big step that not only is that, but it talks about the net offer. Because if your price, let's say the house is $300, and Rochelle's client offers $305. So our client came in at $3, but did the multiple offer clause. Well, her client asked for $10,000 in closing costs with any extra money going to the HOA. And then when we look at her special steps, she asked for a termite bond, a home warranty. She just had a list. When you added those things up, it was another couple thousand. Well, her price of $300 really isn't $300 anymore. You need to take out the 10 in closing costs, bring her to $280, and then a couple other thousand. And in the beginning, people were only talking about the price and not the net offer. So we changed our SIP saying to include taking out closing costs, special stipulations, personal property asked for, any, extra fridges they asked for, if they asked for the washer and dryer, all that stuff that's going to cost the seller
They
something.
just shopping in my house.
Yeah, well, and you will, and I know they talked about that in your putting offer together class. I think it's the hardest thing when you have two people that are very emotional and you start throwing in personal property. And is that kind of what they shared? It's better to keep it separate or put it on, and the lender doesn't want to see that because I don't want give you a 30-year mortgage on a 10-year-old couch. So they don't even want to see it in there. So it's got to be on that personal property form with $0 if there's any personal property coming in the trade. And a lot of times we'll have a seller who's like, I'll include this with the right offer, or I'm going to sell it. I'm like, give me a list of everything you want to sell and how much you want for it. And we're going to just do a little menu, and that's going to be at the house. And that way, if somebody wants it, they know I can buy it, and they can bring cash to the closing for that, $45 for that table. And then it's not even muddying the water and getting people more emotional. Okay? Because that's something that hits people when they ask for their personal stuff. All right? Closing costs. So now we've gone all the way through closing costs. A couple of minutes for a break. Next is going to be, one thing on the closing date. With the closing date, you can be you can come up with other solutions. Like we talked about the case where the person needed to stay in the house for a week. We were in a multiple offer once where our closing date was C special stip number 1, and in the special stip we said seller to pick the closing date based on their convenience, any day from today to, and we did it with under 45 days, so the loan rate didn't change. And they could lock in up to, August 14th. And that way it let the seller pick, so they had control. It was an older couple, very upset, moving around the house, felt like they had no control of things. I'm like, let's let them pick the date. They loved that. So you can come up with some things that can help. Typically everybody has a date. What is the date we try to avoid? What's the date?
Last day of the month.
Yay! The least favorite day to close, especially with a first-time home buyer.
Why?
Because it's the busiest day of the month. So if you close...
First day and last day.
Yeah, so if you're closing, let's pretend Friday is the last day of the month. First-time home buyer, something's wrong. Something's missed, anything can happen.
Okay.
And you're going quick and they're waiting. Sometimes the closings are a little bit delayed. It's like a crazy experience. Well, you bump that up and do it on Wednesday or Thursday. There's like 2 people in there. You've got the room. Nobody's coming in after you. A lot of times there's, several closings, but they're not back to back. The attorney's going to be able to say, let me make sure you understand everything. There's much more time. It's just great. Fridays are my least favorite day to close because I feel like if anything's wrong, we're not going to be able to handle it to Monday. Now we got trouble. And then the last day of the month. So whenever possible, we'll say, hey, would y'all mind if let's push it up a day? Let's make it a little nice and easy for everybody.
I always try to schedule them Tuesday to Thursday.
Yeah, that is
Monday's a
very
tough day
smart.
for attorneys, so is Friday. Doesn't matter if it's
Right,
first day
and
or last day of the
does
month.
the paperwork get there?
Yeah.
Nobody's working on Saturday and Sunday except us.
Yeah.
So does the paperwork get there? Does everything get finalized? I was working on an offer on one of those big box companies that had a listing, and they had a stip which we are starting to use. I loved, and it was something to the effect of, and if you need it, I can get the wording to you, but it was like if the due diligence end date, financing, appraisal contingency dates end on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a federal holiday, all parties agree that the end date shall be the following Monday, and they put like 8 o'clock. So I'd seen the one that's business days, where people say all business days referenced in the contract shall end at 8 p.m. Because there are people who will be calling you at 11 o'clock at night on the end date, and I just feel that no good happens after 9. People are tired, and when you're tired, you're emotional, and the negotiations do not go well, and that's when things end. And there's a lot of expletives, and then nobody sleeps that night. It's horrible. And I don't know why in real estate the end of business is truly the end of the day, and you look at the contract and it says 11:59. Or you're going to call your client and say, hey, I just need to let you know they're not going to do 5 of the 10 items on the inspection, even though they're all safety and structural. You're going to call them at 11:59 and tell them that and say, do you still want to, how should we come back? What do you, it just is, this is bad. So that's one step, and the other one is, no matter how careful you are during your negotiation, you're trying to time, if we agree, when is the day we're going to agree? Because I need to check all those dates to make sure they're not falling on a weekend. You fall on a Sunday, well, you can't get quotes for your seller on a Saturday or Sunday typically. And if you're a buyer, the same thing. It doesn't help. I would also throw one other thing about all those dates, all the most important dates, that when we talk about my favorite subject, epic fails we've learned from. When we talk about those, I'm going to tell you one of my most embarrassing but well-learned epic fail. Calculated all the dates, was working with an agent who was like probably my second or third transaction. This agent had been in the business working with investors for like 30 years. She was high D, direct, knew what was going on. Put together the dates, did the FMLS form, important dates in the contract, so that it forced me to sit down, calculate all the dates. I wrote them all up and said, I'm going to send you all the important dates in the contract. Do you mind taking a look? Tell me if you see anything incorrect or missed. Nothing. Perfect. We're all going forward. Call the, sent over everything and just said, hey, I just want to make sure you received our list, and tomorrow we expire. And she's like, and I've waited 3 days, I haven't heard from you, and I've been calling, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh no, we expired yesterday, due diligence. I was like, what? She's, yeah, you calculated the date wrong. And I was like, can I make sure I understand something? So when I sent you the list of dates and asked if everything was correct, I said, did you notice the date was wrong then? She said, yes, I did.
Oh, but you didn't call me back.
I
I'm
said,
sorry.
No, but it's in there. I said, well, why wouldn't you say something? She goes, I wanted you to mess up your due diligence. So this was like back in the day, and that's how people thought. Like, it used to be that you didn't call somebody and say, hey, due diligence is up in 2 days. I don't have your report. We need some time to check all this out. So, what do? Well, we missed it. So I had to take that list of all the stuff on there. I had to get it all priced out. I had to call our client and say, I made a grave error, and I will be paying for all of your inspection items. Because, what else to do? Oh, and it was a 2% commission. Because that's how she rolled. So, this is my favorite thing, even though we all know how to count and calculate. What it was on this one, it was, I was looking at my planner at that time. And what I did is I forgot to go to the very top when it goes 31. Oh, wait a second.
Also, Deb, there's a difference between regular days and business days.
Yes. Oh gosh.
That's gotten us before. Yeah,
Yes, counting them all
thought we were
out.
under due diligence.
All right. I love this little website, timeanddate.com. So you get your binding agreement date. So we'll go in and we'll say our start date is the 29th. And what I want to do, I want to add my due diligence, which is 10 days. And come down here, calculate the new date. Oh, okay, result. February 8th is due diligence. And then I can look and see, where is it? Let's do 21 days as our financing. It's Wednesday, January 29th. So I was always trying to come up with, when are we going to go binding perfectly well to make sure I can come in here, make sure we're not falling on a weekend. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Why don't we just use this step that says anything on a Saturday, Sunday rolls over to a Monday? And quite honestly, it's been very well received. Most people are like, oh, thank you. I hate 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, somebody thinking I'm going to call them. I think it's great to protect the clients, keep things unemotional, and make sure you're going to be top of your game. And I like to get up really early. I am not top of my game at 11. And I know that about myself. So the timeanddate.com calculator is great. Even if you calculate them or somebody sends them to you, I still run them through here and I double check them. Because that was horrible. Boom! Thank you! All right, we are going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you so much, Tony, for giving me the hook.
My pleasure.
Please walk around. Get some water, coffee, if you need a snack, whatever you need. I have no issue with anybody eating while they're in here.
Can I put
And
in
I'll
that
see you in
special
10.
stipulation as the agent, or does it have to be Keller Williams?
You, as the agent, will put in any special steps, and we're going to talk
Good.
about those. Yes,
Yeah, because I don't do well at 11 o'clock.
yes. And, and that's, again, something, how can I best help my client? I found that was not going well, and I kept saying, why is this how it is here? And those were my two things. There's no other industry work for it. Correct. Unless you're someone like,
What did you click on here? The date-to-date calendar? Because it doesn't look the same as what you got
Okay,
there.
so go home,
Uh-huh.
click on home, it should change your picture. Okay, then go to calculators right here,
Okay.
and then
Business date?
business date. No, that's Monday to Friday. Do the date-to-date calculator. Okay, so then you do your start date. Oh, I'm sorry, this is between 2 dates. Go back to calculators. And it's not date-to-date, it's date calculator, add, subtract. Okay. So then you can come in and add or subtract dates, months, weeks, years, whatever. and that will let you go through.
So the example you were given was what, January
I like
28th?
the way the neck is.
Yeah, like I just went in,
29th.
or you can come in right here and click on that, and it will always highlight today's date. So if you went binding today, you can say, okay, today's our binding date, so today starts the clock, and I said 10 days for inspection time period. So add 10 days, and then make sure you hit calculate new date.
I get off at 6.
Okay, so look at, your due diligence is ending on Saturday, February 8th. So, is that seller in town? Are they traveling? Are you trying to negotiate? Because they're in Tybee Island with no reception. Do they have somebody that takes a day away from them, able to get quotes to see, can I afford to do this work? It just causes so many troubles. Now, and then going in there, you would have a good idea of what is coming up for your finance, your appraisal, and your due diligence date. Okay, also safer. And your calculating. Learn! Like I tell my kids, don't do the same mistakes I did. Go make new ones!
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he didn't send it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
Yeah.
not sure I even asked him for
Emailed him
it.
asking him for it.
Oh, you did?
He just said, cool.
Send him a text and say, hey, would you email this? And he'll do
I
it.
know Stacy had sent a bunch of stats over a week ago. Because when you go into some of those stats, it gives you like a boilerplate,
Right?
and you've got to fill in a lot of information. It
Uh,
just doesn't pop up.
Good morning. Good morning.
Tom, that multiple offer situation you talked about sounded really
Not right now.
fantastic.
it was pretty amazing, man. I got to tell you, it kept me busy. I mean, it was just bing, bing. So when you have a listing, there's an app that you use, and the app will send you a request to see the property. So 7 of those, but not only do you get a request to see the property, then there's a confirmation of the property, and then when they go see the property, it's they tell. I mean, so it's bang, bang. I mean, it's just
Keep bouncing back and forth, letting you know
yeah,
where they are. And
yeah. I mean, it's a cool app, but I was like, man. I mean, if you get a serious property, and then I've got emails coming from people with offers and phone calls coming. You know, why did you decline my appointment? Because, you know, on Sunday I was declining all the appointments or canceled the appointments. And why did you cancel my appointment? My client really wants to see it. And I said, well, we've accepted an offer.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, but I mean, I literally have, so I'm going to go into that same neighborhood, and I'm gonna go up there on a Saturday and knock on every door
Mhm.
and just say, you know, I'm gonna find people who've been in there for 5 or 6 years,
Mhm.
and especially bought, you know, at a really down time, and say, hey, you know, a couple things. First, do you have private mortgage insurance?
Mhm.
Are you paying that right? Because your house is appreciated, and you could probably get that private mortgage insurance off. So now, wow, this guy's here to help. And secondly, do you want to sell your house and take that equity and go buy a bigger house? And
It's a good situation.
And keep the same payment.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do my best to see if I can get 5 or 10 listings in that neighborhood in the next month.
And that's a good stuff.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's in the can. So, yeah. But, you know,
Great.
auction.com.
I've looked at them before. I've made an offer on several of them. We've never gotten them off auction. So
Are you using other people's money when you invest?
So where are we coming
it's
from?
hard.
I don't think so. I think we put them
What, are you doing commercial right now?
Yeah, that's when I started.
they had this check.
And work on it.
I know, I think I mixed them up. That's what I mean. On Thursday, 1:30, 11 to Diane Black.
It takes a long time.
We have on both
Yeah, because they
schedules.
didn't have sewer, so I'm like,
Yeah.
and so they've been working for the past year and a half to do sewer for the county. Are you-
On the
are you
line, on the
using
calendar, it says
that?
that.
Yeah, so it's been a long road. Everything, money going out, but we couldn't make it. You know. But when it does happen, it happens good.
I think we might get started and just let the last folks pop in. So we're still on the common points of a negotiation, but please know, all of this is gonna tie back together and we won't be spending as much time in some of the other sections because we've kind of woven it through here. So our next common point of negotiation is the conveyances. Ralph, do you mind?
No problem.
Awesome, Joe.
Conveyances are defined by a locality's board of realtors. The general rule of thumb is that attached fixtures stay with the home and non-realty items, like personal property, go with the seller. In negotiations, a buyer may request that certain personal property items stay with the home, such as furniture, window treatments, or refrigerator.
Yeah, and that's where it's so interesting is you as the agent walk through the house. If you can get the seller's disclosure beforehand, you know what's staying, what isn't. If not, when you get it, I like to pull up the pictures, go through it again, make sure it's staying. And if there's something you're not sure about, you want to special stip it. Like, you know, say it says refrigerator remains, but there's a refrigerator upstairs and there's one in the terrace level kitchen. So you want to make sure that there's not any questions of what's staying and what isn't. And on the flip side, with a seller, you know, so often there's so many things they're thinking of, they don't think about, is there a sentimental piece in here? So one of the questions we always ask our sellers as we walk through, is there anything here that would look like it's attached and it stays with the home that perhaps has sentimental value for you? For example, your chandeliers, and a mirror in the bathroom. A lot of people take the builder grade mirror down, go traveling, get this cool funky mirror. That needs to go with them forever. Well, if you've checked off mirrors on the seller's disclosure and people assume there's a mirror in the bathroom, let's take that down and pack it up and let's get a good plain mirror in there in its place. Same thing with the chandelier. You know, we had somebody buying a house and the seller sort of forgot that the chandelier was like this $4,000 chandelier. It didn't look like it, and it was their grandmother's, which was the more important thing. They could not part with it. Well, our buyer loved the chandelier, and it was there, and you're not going to go and find like a $35 chandelier at Lowe's that's going to replace that. So that became a big thing to negotiate afterwards, that if their agent had known that that meant something to them and they needed to keep it, they could have said, before we take the pictures, let's pull these things down because we don't even want those things in the pictures. So conveyances, what did I see when I walked through the house? What do I see on the seller's disclosure statement? And if it's your listing, ask, and ask. Just make 100% sure. And when you get the documents back from your listing, you always want to go through the list. Make sure that they put everything in, that you don't have any questions. Because if you walk the house and you don't have a question, you know it's good. If you're not 100% sure, or if you say, hey, remember in the back they had a fire pit, looks like it's built in, or is that staying, that needs to be another? Or, you know, what else do I need to add in here? Okay, so you'll end up with a lot less issues with conveyance if you really look at the seller's disclosure and walk the house and keep your eyes peeled. And then again, when people do want personal property, if it's not something the seller is thinking of selling separately, you can ask and then put it on a personal property agreement. Has everybody seen that personal property agreement? I figured you would by now. It's just sofa and you know, or more importantly, refrigerator located in terrace level, so they know which one, you know, stainless fridge, terrace level, value $0. That's usually where we see it's a problem, when there's two of something. And it looks built in because there's a bar down there and you think it's staying, and then they walk in for the final walkthrough and the wine cooler's gone and the fridge is gone, and they're like, ah, you know, so those are the things you want to know. All right. Any questions on conveyances or anything being left behind? All right. Earnest money, please, Ralph.
It is in the seller's best interest for the buyer to put as much into escrow as possible, as soon as possible. While the locality's Board of Realtors has standard practice for when earnest money and option fee, where applicable, is deposited, the money is often negotiated.
So most people put earnest money down as 1%. Now, in the case of your multiple offer, Tom, that would be about $1,700 on a $170,000 house. Now, Tom gets multiple offers and they're very close. How is it going to look to his seller if one of the people doubled and maybe put in $3,400 or $3,000? You're saying, I'm so sure this is what I want, I'm willing to put a little more down and get skin in the game. And then, of course, they know when they get the final settlement statement, that deposit is going to be pulled out of the funds that they owe and need to bring to closing. So it's not like it just disappears or it goes into a mortgage and doesn't affect their monthly payment. It goes into what they have to bring to the table for the closing. So that's where earnest money can be a good negotiating tool. If you need to show that this is a strong candidate to purchase the house, upping the money will do that. It's also wonderful if when you send in the offer, you already have an earnest money check that you can either scan and then cover up their account numbers or photocopy it and black them out, whatever you need to do. We don't want to be sending anybody's routing and account numbers around, but to show that you have the check, meaning they came prepared, ready to buy. I've already got the earnest money check. All I need is for your seller to agree to it, and I will be running that down to that earnest money safety deposit box. And even if you think you're about to, you can bring it down and just put on the envelope. Don't deposit until notified of bonding. You know, but then you don't have to worry about it, because at that point we are holding someone else's money. We want to be very respectful of that. Anybody have any questions on earnest money? Anything weird ever come up? You good? Okay. Last is the repairs, which is always the most fun in any contract. Ralph, can you read the repairs?
Most offers are contingent on the outcome of the home inspection and necessary repairs. Depending on the complexity of the repairs, buyers may ask the seller to make the repairs prior to closing, subject to follow-up inspection. Deduct the repair costs from the sales price or pay a lump sum as closing to cover costs.
Okay, so you go on the inspection. Typical days is 10. In a multiple offer situation, I would bring that down and not ask for the full 10. Since they have so many people competing, they want to know that if something doesn't work out with you, they can go to somebody else that's not off the market too long. So you might do 7. Or when you're competing, call the inspector and say, what's your first appointment date? Oh, you could take me on Monday. We're negotiating on Friday. Would that be in the letter? Yes, dear listing agent so-and-so, we are so excited about this property. Here's my client's letter. Thought your seller would like to see what attracted them to the home. Thank you for our conversation. And I also wanted to let you know we do have an inspection appointment set up on Monday. So when you choose us to work with, you can expect us to be on top of things. Thank you. You know, something that's going to just say, hey, I'm ready. And in a multiple offer, there's that possibility you're going to go forward. You want to have that ready for you. Okay, so typically 10 days is the norm. The seller paying the non-refundable option money and the additional option money, I've only used that once and seen it used once in all these years, and it was an investor who, to sweeten their deal, said, I will pay you an additional X $1,000 when we get through the inspection for you to hold as, you know, our option money. So they upped up their money they put down after the inspection to really kind of hold the property. That was the only time I've seen it used. Then lead-based paint, relationships the same. How about this time limit of offer at the bottom? In your class with contracts, did they share a norm on the time limit of offer?
20, 48.
Yeah, 24 to 48. It's so funny, when the market was slow, you know, somebody would give you like 3 or 4 days. When the market was hot, we might get an offer at 6 and they ask for a reply by 11. You know, you're like, I've got to drive this one over to my elderly clients and sit down with them. I can't imagine how we're going to have all that done by 11. Scan it back to you, but you can get some things, crazy things done. But today it's typically 24 to 48 hours. When you think that it's a hot property, normally I'd say if it's a new listing, you might want to shorten the time a little bit. However, the last 3 that went to multiple offers on our team had all been homes that were sitting there from last year. And then in January, how Brad talked about this new interest and suddenly people are out. One of them was like 192 days. We put an offer in, that night they got 3 more.
Isn't that weird?
It's just like January came and people said, my New Year's resolution, I'm getting on with my life, I want to live somewhere different, I'm ready to be joy-filled, and I'm calling my agent. And so that whole thing about when people say, oh, I'm really excited about a foreclosure, and you're like, you look at your stats, oh, you know, in this particular area you're interested in, foreclosures are like 0.02%. So in other words, it's almost like us having a snow day. It's very rare. So then you say to your client, well, if you're looking for a foreclosure, am I hearing you right? You're looking for a really good deal. Absolutely, that's what I want. What about a good deal is important to you? What would make a good deal for you? Kind of ask a couple more questions. And then your search might switch a little bit because you know the people that just listed this week, they're not ready to drop their pricing because they just listed and they feel that there's many people out there who are going to look. But once, as you know from the stats, once you hit week 3, showings go boom, 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 poof. So you start pulling listings that have been on the market for, 90 days or more. You're looking where the seller is starting to go, what the heck's going on here? Why is no one buying this great house? And that might be where you'd start your search. Okay, so that's time limit of offer. So this kind of takes us through looking at the purchase and sale agreement a teeny bit differently because all these spots are negotiable. And then I'm also going to send down a copy of the special stip page 7. I'm going to just start like this if you guys don't mind. If you could take one and pass it. And all right. So I wanted to just touch on page 7 in the contract because you just can't talk about this page enough. We're talking about multiple offers and showing that your paperwork is tight. There is nothing more annoying than section 8 where you list everything that you are sending. Did everybody get one? Everybody's good? Okay, Paul, you can just throw the extras on the end and I'll pick them up after. Thank you so much. Nothing more annoying than you get an offer and you turn here and look at section 8 where it says here are all the exhibits and addenda that are included and there's nothing checked off or their exhibits are blank. So to tighten it up, you've got to go back and fill them in and then everybody's got to initial them because now you've made a change to the document. Why would you not put all this information there? So that is something that I'll often look at. And then this is where anything else can be added. It might be something to tighten things up. It might be a request. So I just put a couple of the most common buyer ones that you see, all items, and this is that you don't have to put this because you have a seller's disclosure, but if for any reason you're not 100% sure what's being stayed or what's not, you can say all items identified as remaining with the property in the seller's disclosure statement, including the refrigerator, washer, and dryer to remain at no cost to purchasers. So if it looks like they checked the box and erased it or wrote it back, or you're not sure, put a little stip in that says verified.
Deb, do you put contingent upon inspection on every single property that your clients are buying?
You mean the 10-day due diligence inspection?
Yeah.
As compared to just buying it as is?
I'm talking about inspection. So what's found in the inspection is my point.
Is the purchase of the property based on what's found in the inspection?
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes, but I will also say that I think an inspection is such a wonderful opportunity for a buyer and it's portrayed as one of the most scariest events because they're going to go in, and we could take you into a brand new house, brand new construction, and that inspection report is going to have 40 items on it. And as a buyer buying a resale, they need to hear that. Because the inspection report, the job of the inspector is to crawl through the house and find everything.
Yep.
And also to say, it looks good right now, but hey, in 3 years, you might need to paint this the way the sun's hitting it or whatever. And your list, when you leave and you get that inspection report, is your home's not only resume, but property manual. Where's the water cutoff? Where's this? And pictures of everything. So you get that 60-page booklet on a house you want to buy, and it's like shutdown mode. So for a buyer, I always say, Tom, it's a great house. We're going to go in with the inspector, kind of follow him around. Listen, I always go on the inspection. Why would you not? You need to hear what he's saying and what he's finding. And you need to be there with the buyer so that they're not, oh my God, they heard something, but it means something else to them. You need to be able to do that. And plus, it's a great time for them to measure. That's when everybody, you're there for 4 hours probably, anywhere, 2 to 4 hours, depending on the size. Measure them. Talk to the buyer beforehand. We're going to find a lot of things. What we're looking for is safety and structural. The light switch plate is cracked, it's $1. We don't want to ask for stuff like that. We're looking for how do the systems work? How do the appliances work?
Okay.
And a lot of times there's stuff the seller doesn't even know about because their first thing is the seller hiding all this, especially a first-time home buyer? So many times it's stuff none of us could have seen when we walked through the house when we first looked at it, Tom, and you loved it. The inspector's going to go on the roof or use a drone, and he's going to go in the attic. And there might be like a little teeny leak somewhere. We're having him check all of those things. Then based on his findings, he's going to write a report. I need to let you know, you're going to want to keep it. Maybe even write some notes on it, but it's probably going to be about 60 pages. You don't have to read it all today, but where we're going to focus is on the summary. Summary is usually a 1 to 3 pages, and it's all the most important things the inspector wanted to make sure you knew before you bought the house. And that's usually what we're going to go through and talk about. Is this safety? Is this structural? And what are the most important items to you? And then we may need to call somebody and try to get some price things. If there's a lot of stuff, or depending on how we're going to negotiate it and what works for you as the buyer. And sometimes, let's be honest, you look at a house and you see there's been an awesome person living there that loves to do work themselves. So in a case like that, you might not want them to fix it because you want it to be, and you would outline in your amendment, licensed contractor or whoever, professional HVAC guy. But in cases like that, you might want to ask for closing cost dollars instead, and that's why I don't like to max out the closing dollars. Like if you're working with your lender, Randy and Matt and Paul, and they say, okay, can you give me an idea of what the closing costs are going to be on this house, for $300,000? And they say, okay, your closing costs are probably going to be based on everything with them in that $6,000 to $7,000 range. When we put the offer in, we wouldn't ask for $6,000 or $7,000 in closing costs because we want to leave some so that when we get the inspection report, we go through it, and Tom says, all right, I can do this, this, and this, but these 4 are huge for me. Okay, 2 of them are systems. What if we ask for a home warranty if we didn't ask for it yet? Because that will help us through that. And they said it's working great now, but it's nearing the end of its life, but it's not near it yet. So that will get us through those. How about these 2? Let's get some quotes. All right, they come out to about $1,200. Let's ask for $1,500 in closing costs. And you just have an amendment that says, the amendment address concern that seller to pay an additional $1,500 in closing and buyer's closing costs for a new total of blah. You never say in lieu of repairs, because think about it. I'm the mortgage lender. I'm going through your file and I'm like, wow, they're taking money instead of fixing the house that we're lending you the money on? Oh my, that's not gonna fly.
Right.
So you just, and then they take that money and they hire people they know or or we know here. Does that help?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
So
I got an offer on another house that I'm worried about.
So please go ahead. So does that get you? Yet you don't even think, but the home inspection, huge place of negotiation. And then these are some of the normal steps, like we talked about. If you're not sure about something, disclosure, reiterating it, or if there's anything that was a warning bell for you, just making sure. At closing, seller shall provide a home warranty. You can either ask for it on the front side. If you feel like from your talks it's not going to happen, but you see that there's an older system, you might wait and ask for it during the inspection process. In our mailroom, we have brochures on these 4. We have fabulous partners here with different home warranties, and you can look at those, see what will be the best fit for what your client needs. No later than at closing, they shall provide a termite guarantee. Most people have them. Sometimes you don't in Georgia because people don't think about it. You've got to have one here because we don't freeze, so we don't kill those little buggers off. And then you have these wonderful little free renters living in your house that cost lots and lots of money. So if they don't have a termite bond, that's like a big warning bell in your head, and one of the things you're going to ask for your buyer is a termite bond and or a clean letter, because you can't get the bond unless the house is checked and it's clean, free of termites. So if they found termite damage, they would have to fix it to get the bond. So in the end, everybody's protected. That's kind of a normal one you see with buyers. This number 4 I've started adding recently, because when you read the purchase and sale agreement, they talk about the house being left in broom clean condition. You know, we're free of debris. There's a statement in there. We all signed this. Everyone agreed to it. You go in, the garage is full, the shed is full, the attic is full, and it's not anything your client would want. It's old garbage, broken stuff, boxes, wood, all this. So we started adding, seller shall leave the home in broom clean condition and free of debris, including but not limited to the garage, attic, yard, etc., with all personal property being removed unless indicated elsewhere in this agreement. Because some people, you know, again, mental, emotional, and physical. Physical, the worst part of moving. You're exhausted and you're like, I cannot climb up the stairs and empty anything out. I'm just leaving it. If there's something there, they can have it. Well, more often than not, when you get up there, you're like, nobody wants this stuff. That's why it's been here for 30 years. So that kind of is just another little good thing to keep you protected. All right, any questions on special stipulations? I would say one other thing on special stipulations real quick. So special stipulations answer who, what, where, when, and why. There are so many that are already written and have been used and tested, but you don't want to just write your own unless you run it by our broker, Lynn LaCroix, because you want to make sure it answers all those questions. So something neat to do is when you come into templates in dotloop and you pull up the GAR Interactive, which are the Georgia Association of Realtors forms, you can put in stipulations, and look here, you've got special stipulations, an index of all of them, and the form. So I'm just going to pull up this index real quick so you can see. Look at how many stipulations are out there based on type, earnest money, financing, miscellaneous, property condition. You name it, it's come up and they've put something together on it. But what I love to do every year, and I'm saying that jokingly, but coming in here and you can read through and see all the special stipulations that are normally used. So when it comes across your desk, you kind of know, okay, I've seen that before. We're, just get a great sense of what's out here. Here's this termite one. Could be utilities. There's earnest money. It covers everything that has been a norm that comes up in a contract. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, maybe take a look, save it to your desktop so you can see it and refer to it. But the special stipulations give you that extra thing to ask for a negotiation as well as extra security. Okay? All right. So now we have all the places where we're going to do our negotiation on the contract. Let's talk about how we do it. This is where we're going to talk about the 3 P's approach. Very, very straightforward. And we've kind of been weaving through and talking about this as we went. The first step is always to prepare. The second is to present. And the third is to position. Would you mind reading on page 14, the 3 P's approach?
Sure. So number 1 is prepare. Preparation is key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. Know your goal. Have a clear goal of reaching a win-win agreement in which both the buyer and seller are satisfied with the outcome of the negotiation. Remind your client of their motivation for moving or buying the house, and that when the contract closes, they'll be able to move on with their lives. Know your client. Make sure you fully understand your client's goals. Learn the areas in which they are willing to negotiate and where they will stand firm. Think ahead. Anticipate what the other party wants out of the negotiation. Write down how you think they may counter the offer and how you plan to handle it. Set clear expectations. Prior to meeting with the other party, set clear and realistic expectations with your client and then under promise and over deliver. Stress the importance of moving quickly to create a sense of urgency. Part of setting clear expectations with your client is being clear that win-lose agreements are likely to be rejected by the other side. To set yourself up for success, make it win-win. Be informed. Before making an offer or counteroffer, it's good practice to speak with 2 other agents. Ask open-ended questions and use active listening to find out as much as you can about the other party and their agent. This helps you know with whom you are negotiating, on what points you will negotiate, and where you and your client have leverage. Obey the laws. Every state and locality has its own set of laws that regulate zoning, mortgage qualification, and other real estate matters. Stay current on your local regulations and stay out of court. Know the documents inside and out. Become familiar with your local Board of Realtors governing forms. Take the time needed to understand the form templates and what belongs in each field. The 2014 NAR profile of home buyers and sellers revealed that 83% of buyers considered negotiation skills to be very important when working with a real estate agent.
And I think this year it was even higher than that. So, you know that most people have an idea of what they want to do in their mind, but they also want to hear how you would frame it. And that's where having different ideas on how to utilize and make things win-win, not having the information. They talk about being informed here, calling the listing agent when you're working with the buyer, or calling the buyer's agent when you're representing the seller. Say, can you share with me what attracted your folks most to this house? And what besides price is important to them? When you find out why they wanted the house, was it the schools, was it something about the house? Does it have a terrace level and they might have an in-law move into them? The more you can understand about why they were interested and picked this house over all the others they looked at that day, the better you are, and that information is going to help you in negotiating back and forth. And you can share with the client and say, you know, this was one of the things that really attracted them. This is what they're most excited about. So when something comes up that might tie back to it, say, maybe we can push a little stronger here if we give here, because remember, this was something very important to them, and maybe we could help them out. Yeah, you know, so that's going to help you understand how can I best negotiate and take care of my client based on what I find out from them. The goal and knowing your client, always understanding their motivation. In your buyer consult, I know in the paperwork they had like a little buyer consult the buyer fills out. Whether you do it there, you do a Google form, you do an email, but I love when they put in writing, here are the top 5 things I want in a house when you're working with the buyer. And here's the one thing that even though it had these top 5 things, it's a deal killer. So for some people, it might back up to a busy road, it might be a power line, might be huge big dogs next to on both sides of the house. Everybody has something else. Ask that question. Ask it again, ask it again, ask it again. It's great too when they see you taking notes or saying, hey, you know, we went out to this house today and I was thinking about it, I'm looking at your list, this hit the 5 points, so they know that you're listening to them. And the reason I say ask it again and ask it again, I had a client, did all that, went through, said these are your top things, absolutely, went through everything, got to the 3rd house, okay, we can go. I'm like, well, we're just walking up. I said, what is it? There's a tree in the backyard. I said, yeah. She goes, it's about 5 feet from the back of the house. She goes, I can't have any trees closer than like 10 feet because one had fallen on her house when she was young. And I was like, oh. So I'm thinking, what did I not ask that didn't come up as the one thing that's a deal killer, because that was her deal killer. So sometimes you got to keep asking it, and even if you thought you got it up front, you might get it based on a comment they make walking through the house. So always be listening and asking questions. How would you use a space? What do you like? What do you not like? The one caveat to that is love all that information in the car. Don't do any of that in the house. Everybody has cameras. It is unbelievable today. And you used to have to say, please note cameras and use. You don't anymore. I cannot tell you how many people we've heard about who gave away their negotiating power by their comments they made standing at the front door, and the Nest doorbell picked them up and the sellers got to hear it. Or sitting in the house going, oh my God, this is the perfect one. What do you think we should offer? Well, I love it. I would pay over list. Would that be valuable information to know as a seller? You're like, oh, so another thing in your buyer consult is that we have to assume every property we go into has cameras. And if we assume that we're good, so let's just walk through, calm. Maybe if you like something, you just go. We kind of talk about it, but when we get in the car, that's when you can do your happy dance, and we'll say, okay, this is what I love, this is what I did it. Let's jot these things down. And if this is the favorite house of the day, turning the edge or clipping it, this is our favorite house today. And we're going to see if we can beat it with the rest of them. But don't say it in the house. Okay. I'd like to touch on this a little bit, the obey the laws. Truly, nobody that we've ever worked with is saying, how can I cheat the system? How can I forge on this? How can I, nobody goes into it with that. The problem is sometimes they don't know and they do something that is not acceptable. So there's great ethics classes, what you can say, what you can't say. There are great, here's how to be fair classes. There's the contract classes. There's all these things. And if you're ever not sure, you've got a plethora of people to ask. But knowing the rules, I think, just really puts you in the driver's seat, because you never have to worry about somebody getting angry at you and then saying, oh, I'm going to turn them in because I saw them put up a sign before it was listed, or whatever their situation was. So, like, we have to have on our signage, our company name has to be bigger than the name if you have your own company name. And nobody really cares about that, really, in life. However, you hear the story where two people competed, one won, one didn't. The one who didn't calls and turns in the agent because their listing sign, their logo was bigger than the KW logo. So when you know all the rules, then you never need to worry, because you know that what you're doing is compliant. And that's typically, I find, when somebody gets bit, it's not because they meant to do it, it was an oversight. Okay? And then know the documents inside and out. It will take, I'm telling you, 25 readings of that purchase and sale over time. Same thing with the other one, exclusive buyer and exclusive seller agreement. You want to know those, that you could just talk about them, because that's part of your negotiation in sharing who you are and how important these forms are, because these forms were written by the Georgia Association of Realtors team to protect the buyer and to protect the seller. So a great pamphlet to give each one of them is how to protect yourself when buying a home, how to protect yourself when selling a home. And just say, hey, we adhere to all of these recommendations and guidelines, and we're going to be bringing them up. And how we bring them up is we're going to end every conversation with, here's what comes next, so that you know what's going on. So you're really showing them that you are on top of the forms and the processes and procedures.
Where do you get those forms?
All of those are here under your GAR interactive. Yeah. So if you type in how to protect. Let's see, wait. Protect yourself. Hang on one second. Protect. Sorry about that. Protect your family from lead in your home if you're showing something built from 1978 or before. Protect yourself when buying a home. Such a great form. You want to go out and meet with a buyer, bring this to them, read it and know it, and talk about how important it is that you stay protected through this process. And I do all these things. Protect yourself when buying a home that's new construction, protect yourself when selling a home. They also have one, I don't think it starts with protect, but I think it's like buying a home in a community that has HOAs, so you understand what an HOA is. They've got some great documentation that's there to help, and that could be part of your package with your clients. Okay? So, you've prepared yourself. In the middle of a negotiation, when they say talk to somebody else, it's so great to say, here's what we're up against. I'm thinking they might say this. Do you have any other ideas? Because if you go into it already thinking, okay, whenever we negotiate, I'm like, okay, they could accept it, they could counter, they might bring up this point, they might bring up that point. So then it gets your brain ticking saying, okay, how would I respond to that? Well, if they said they wanted to offer less, I could pull stats on our listing and say, here's the average sales price, or here's what's going on in this city, or, however I need to frame it, here's what's going on in the high school districts. What sort of data do I need to have ready to be able to negotiate and come back when somebody brings an offer? When you think like that, then you know what questions to ask and say, how else can I be best prepared? And what would be another way to handle the situation so that you've got several quivers in your bow to say, we can handle this, one of three ways, Mr. Buyer. What do you prefer? This, or this. Okay? So that's all the original prep work where you're preparing to negotiate. So then, after the preparation, you come to the presenting. So that's on page 17. Tracy, do you mind reading page 17?
Okay.
For presenting?
Okay. Move into the negotiation process by presenting your current offer to the co-op agent and listening to the respondents. Call the other agent to let them know the offer or counteroffer is coming. Then invite them into the buying loop in eEdge, where they will be able to view the offer contract. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. While it is not always possible or practical to make your presentation in person, a face-to-face meeting allows you to analyze body language and facial expressions. Otherwise, present your offer by phone and listen for verbal cues. Keep quiet once you present an offer. Sometimes, letting the other person do most of the talking is the most powerful negotiation technique because of what they will reveal. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Write down what they say to demonstrate that you are taking them seriously, and then move on. Stay calm and relaxed. Either party may have a strong emotional reaction to the price or other terms of the offer. Be a calming influence until they are able to see the situation rationally again. Remember, you are there as a representative for your client. Keep your emotions out of it. Focus on the customer's needs. Isolate the objections of both sides and offer solutions that will satisfy the other party while still meeting your client's core needs. Give your offer the best chance. Be confident and committed to your offer as you present it. Avoid indicating to the other side if you believe it is a less than great offer for them. Remember the Keller Williams belief: win-win or no deal.
Wonderful, thank you. A couple things in here. Give your offer the best chance. It stymies me that somebody will call and say they're presenting an offer and they're like, well, we're coming in a little low. We could move up if we need to. Why would you ever share that with the listing agent? Because you've already said we fully expect a counteroffer because we really lowballed you on this one.
Right.
Instead of hey, I'm representing this great buyer. Here's their story. Here's what attracted them to the house, and we're really excited about it, and we really hope that we can bring these families together and work together. I'm sending over the offer now. Got to call when you send over the offer because you just don't know. What if you typoed something in the email address, and if you don't call them and they're not expecting it, it may not come in. So you always want to let them know it's coming. Staying calm and relaxed, keeping your emotions out of it. That's why we're all here. So you can come back and just say, I am going to scream, because someday you're taking the high road and you go into every transaction knowing you need to do everything to help keep it together and help everyone, and you will have somebody you're working with that maybe they're having a horrible time in their life. I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe someone's dying, maybe they're in the middle of a divorce, maybe something horrible's happening, but they're just downright mean, nasty, ugly to everybody. And sometimes those people, you're not going to be able to get far with them. And there's been times where we just can't even make things happen, and it's like, all right, where are you going to be this week at lunchtime? I'm bringing you lunch. I need to sit down and talk to you for 5 minutes, because sometimes you can get beyond what you can't with a text or a phone call in person, and you may have to do something like that to get it done. Or I'm bringing you a cup of coffee. I know you've got to start your day with something. I just need 5 minutes. But it's very hard, and our clients don't need to know that stuff. Because think about it. You're making the biggest purchase of your life, and all you're hearing about is what a complete horrible person the other agent is, and they're snappy, and they're saying things like this, and they don't want to bend. And would you be comfortable going forward? No. You're going to be like, oh, this doesn't sound like a good fit at all, does it? We need to cancel and move on. So our job, I think, is also to filter a lot of that. You keep it in and try as hard as you can to be the best person and win them over, because we don't know what's really happening in their world. And sometimes it's an educational thing too. You just don't know. And there's very frustrating times, and that's why it's great to come in and have people you can bounce it off and say, what other tactics can I use? What else can I say? How can I work better with this person who obviously it has some issues going on? All right? Always listening, keeping quiet when you present an offer. Today we don't call, it's really in email that offers are presented, just making sure they know it. Nonverbal cues, we're going to talk about some of those on the phone. Rarely are you ever in person presenting an offer, ever. And then inviting people into the buying loop. At one point that was great. I will share with you, like with DotLoop, you can send and it link them to the loop, and then you can send the document through the loop, and you always have that box you can check that sends it as a PDF. There are agents who write in agent remarks, do not send me documents in any form except PDF. They don't want to go into your loop. They don't want to try to figure all that. They've got everything organized. Maybe they use Dropbox. They want to be able to pull it down. They want to put it in. So from a respect standpoint, since so many people use different products, I always say make sure you send everything as PDF. You can ask them when you start working with them, hey, I'm using DotLoop, or I'm using DocuSign. As we move into DocuSign, can I just invite you to the loop? Is that something that you like to do, or would you prefer getting a separate PDF? So that way you kind of find out what's their best mode. All right, nonverbal cues on page 18. Let's zip through these. All right, you're face to face, and you are having a great conversation. What are some of the things that you are seeing with your buyer, let's pretend, as you're face to face talking, that make you think we're connecting and this is working?
Smile.
Nodding, eye contact. Eye contact.
They lean towards you.
They're leaning in towards you.
Their arms are crossed, they're like open.
Yep, open. They're very open to receiving. Sometimes the palms are up. They might be nodding in agreement. They're probably interested in asking more questions. So they're really into what you're sharing and what's going on. On the negative side of that, you're face to face and that you are not reaching them. We had a listing appointment once, and I will never forget this as long as I live. I was so excited to go. It was a referral. What I did not know is they had already chose somebody. They didn't want to cancel the appointment. I don't know why. So they'd already chosen somebody. So much that when we got there, you always verify, are all the people that are going to be part of the transaction going to be there? The wife wasn't there. So I was like, how can we do a listing presentation without your wife? I said, well, I'm happy to reschedule. And he's like, no, I want to do it right now. I said, well, without your wife, because I'm going to share the data with her. And I said, well, that's a little unconventional, because if she has a question, he goes, I'll call you with the questions. And I was new, so I was like, all right, let me just do it. If nothing else, it's great practice for me. So I'm going through everything, and he is looking over here. He's like this. He's looking down. And I said, is there, anything I'm not answering? Is there, I feel like, I'm missing something, and I really want to be able to help you. No, well, it's fine, it's fine. You showed the house. He was like this. Bedroom, kitchen. It was just like, what is this? So then I find out she left because they'd already picked someone. She didn't want to waste her time. They didn't want to call us and cancel because it was a referral from a family member, And he was in a bad spot. So, I followed up and I said, totally understand. Thank you for your time. We wish you nothing but the best. But that was the ultimate indicator because every single thing here in this face-to-face, he did. And I couldn't think, my brain was like ticking going, what am I doing so wrong? So that's a perfect example. The signs were there and I stopped and asked several times. And it wasn't until after that I finally found out what the issue was. But it's hard to hide what you're really feeling, and I think at some point it comes out. So face to face, boy, we can really see what's happening. The hard part is you're not face to face, and for us, so often we're on our phone. So things are going really great on the phone. What would you hear or see?
Upbeat. A lot of pauses. Upbeat, like a tone.
Upbeat tone, upbeat. A lot of times too, people will talk a little bit faster, so that tone and that rate of speech will go up.
I think you can hear when people are smiling.
You can hear the smile. You can hear that they're happy. Absolutely.
They're asking questions.
They're involved. They're asking questions. Yeah, they're excited about what you're saying and they want more information.
The amount of time they stay on the phone with you.
Okay, that time and they want to stay. They want to get more information. All right, perfect. So those are some of the best cues for a great conversation. Opposite of that, you're on the phone with somebody and you have that horrible feeling they do not want to talk, or what you're delivering has them so angry. It might be something like how the seller has come back with the inspection report. And some of these, your client better than anybody. Sometimes it might be, I'm going to send you the inspection report, I'm going to send you the results over. Would you have time to talk to me at 4, at 5, whatever? So that they have time to look at it and just scream, blasphemy, and everything else. So that by the time you get to them, they've looked at it and they're like, okay, I'm a little calmer now. And I've had people say that, I'm so glad you sent this to me early. Because if you had sent this to me and we started talking, I would have been just saying words I would not have wanted you to hear. Thank you very much. So sometimes giving, if that's how your client is, and then we'll go through it. Or in prefacing it, hey, there's a couple things on here that are quite disagreeable. Don't want you to worry about them. I just want you to read them, and then we're going to talk about what kind of options we can come up with together that are going to make this work for you. And so then they're like, it's yucky, but I know we're going to talk and we're going to come up with some ideas on how to handle this. So how do you hear that on the phone? Things are going to go okay. What are you hearing?
The things are not going to go okay?
Things are going great. Did we do that one?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Things are not going to go well.
Short answers.
Short answers. Yes. Silence.
Or somebody that just says, mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect. No, it just said, yeah. Perfect. Okay, anybody else?
Unengaged, they're doing something else.
You might even hear tapping as they're doing something else. How about their rate? Sarcasm? How about their rate of speech? Is it fast? Is it real slow? Slow, and a lot of times.
Slow, uninterested.
Yes, it's got that uninterested, like monotone kind of sound because they're just like, their brain is somewhere else and they're just thinking, oh my. All right, awesome job. So those would be some of the biggest nonverbal cues. On page 19, they talk about a couple of tactics that you have seen before. You probably remember some of the games that we used to play as kids that come from these. So the first one is nibbling. So nibbling is when you, let's pretend you're representing the seller. So they concede something to the buyer, and the agent calls you up and says, oh, my buyer also wants this, this, and this. And then they're like, okay, well, we can make that work. We can do this and this. And then they call back, oh, and now they also want this. So in other words, they keep nibbling to get more. They're constantly trying to get more, only for their side. So the counter tactic on that would be to kind of stand back for a minute and then nibble back by saying, hey, they're happy to do this if your client will do this. So you deal with a nibbler by saying, how can we make this win-win for both parties? If our client was able to take care of that situation for you, would your client be willing to do this for them? How do we keep it equal here? Hot potato, the other party tries to pass a problem on to you. For example, the co-op agent calls and says, hey, we need you to pay all the closing costs because our client just can't afford them. So they're taking their problems and passing them off to you. It could be something like, our client does not want to have to fix anything in the house. In a multiple offer situation, I will say when people pay at list, above list, especially in a multiple offer where you have all that emotion, you won the deal, but afterwards you're like, oh, did I pay too much? When you go through the inspection, you always want to tell your seller. Now, it's been our observation that when a buyer pays at list or above list for a house, they tend to be tougher and expect more in an inspection because they feel like they've paid more for a house and they want it perfect. That's the hardest part because the seller is like, wow, it's got all this extra money, and then they get the inspection report and they're like, whoa, they want a chunk of that. Well, they're going to expect more and we're going to have to go through and negotiate, but they're almost always going to ask for more because they put so much more out. All right? So the hot potato, when they throw a problem at you, you can see if the problem is real. You can basically throw it back to them. Have they exhausted every possible option for whatever the problem is? Do you have a vendor that could help them? Would you like to talk to our mortgage lender and see about financing some of your closing costs? What else can be done to help get to the resolution versus them just saying, we have this problem and we can't fix it. And then the good guy, bad guy reminds me of that game, Good Cop, Bad Cop. So you've got two people on a team. You might be working with both of them, or you have one person that you work with through the whole contract. Then you maybe have somebody else you work with through contract to close. Could be all different things. But every time you work with them, one person is always nice and accommodating, and the other one is throwing down the hammer. And they're like opposite. But yet it keeps happening. Oh, he said that. Oh, he didn't mean it. Oh, he's horrible. And, you know, you're like, well, we're not getting anywhere here. So that's when you basically call them on the game. They say, what's going on here? You guys got a little differing point of views. And then you kind of stand back and realize they're a tag team and just say, hey, how do we dispense this? Can we just work one person, or can you both make sure you have the same story beforehand, and then let's all work together? Having two different people telling you two different things, not going to work. All right? So
They're in the same room.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I do that a lot.
And then you find out who's really telling the truth.
Who's the leader? Who you're dealing with.
Yeah, that is a great observation. Can we all meet and just get this settled together once and for all? Mm-hmm. And then you would really find out who the players are and how to best work with everybody.
Who's the decision maker?
It's hard. You can't hide when you're in person. That to me is the most frustrating thing with this. You can be anyone you want to be in a text message. Hi, thank you so much for taking the time to respond. Sounds very nice. You might not be. Versus, what? What are you thinking? Call me. You know, you have that opportunity to be anybody with a text message. And sometimes the nicest text message is misread. Like, I'll see people, oh my God, look what he said. I said, well, do you think they could have meant this? No, I think they meant this. I'm like, I think you need to call them. But that is so scary how horrible things are. And unfortunately in our world today, people prefer texting. And you're almost seeing where people prefer that over ever speaking. Like if they could just text and do it all, that'd be it. Don't even want to talk to them. So I think the art of being able to bring people together and talk is going to be valued more and more as we all grow and the world becomes more text oriented. Because some of these things you really need to be somebody who can talk and ask questions and then pull people together. And getting people with complete opposite viewpoints. My house is a castle. The house is a piece of garbage. It needs to be redone. Getting those people together to where they want to sit in the same room, have a closing, shake each other's hand. One's happy to sell their house, one's happy to buy the house. That is the art. That is the art.
So Deb, when sitting in front of the team, the good guy, bad guy, and I have a wife and a husband who are telling me two totally different things, and I have my client sitting to the left of me, do we excuse ourselves and say, can you excuse us for a minute? And I have the conversation with them. Who's gonna run the show? Let's get on one page and move forward.
The only time I could think that y'all would have been in the same spot would be at the closing table.
Okay.
I'm trying to come up with one beforehand, unless for some reason they were letting you in and you came with the buyer. And, you know,
For sale by owner?
and yeah, or for sale by owner. Right, for sale by owner, you would have already met with them, you would have gotten to sign the, you know, the commission page for showing one time only, you know, type thing. And I think yes, you can always say, could you excuse us for a moment and talk? Or depending on what it is, I would always bring it onto myself because, you know, well, you were saying this and you were saying this, already everybody's up in arms. But instead, you know, hey, I just really wanted to make sure that I understood everything, so I'm explaining it to Jerry correctly. Now, blah, 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 blah. So help me out here. You know, so that kind of thing. But I'm thinking most of those conversations would be without your client present, especially if it's something that is a question. Yeah. When you take the ownership on yourself, it allows people to think, oh, they messed up, and then they're a little more comfortable in explaining where they're coming from, versus coming in and more like a, you know, you said, you did, you know, those kind of things don't really help people feel great about what's happening. Especially if they're doing that on purpose and they know they are, because then you're calling them on their game. All right, now our last part in positioning is moving both parties closer to each other until we have full agreement, and that brings us up to the front, right? Everybody's had a turn on that side. Tasha, can you do page 20?
20 or 21?
Oh, is yours 21? Positioning is moving both parties. Acknowledge and affirm common ground?
Here we go.
Okay.
Acknowledge and affirm the common ground where the buyer and seller are in agreement and are in the same position. Then identify which positions may be easily adjusted and which are set in stone. Ask what and how questions to better understand the other party's values and certain things are important to them and why certain things are important to them. For example, say you represent a seller who wants to close in 30 days. If a buyer wants to close within 60 days, ask your client, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are you requesting a 30-day closing? What is important about closing in 30 days? If your client becomes defensive, you would explain, my goal is to let the buyer know why this point is important to you. Understanding what is important to the other party allows you to prioritize and address their issues in order of importance. Positioning is a process and sometimes requires you to come back to the negotiating table more than once. Sometimes several counteroffers will be necessary to negotiate an acceptance. Know when to walk away. Sometimes the other side may refuse to give your client the win they need despite your efforts. Knowing when and how to walk away can not only save your client from a win-lose deal, but it can sometimes jolt an unreasonable party into a concession for fear of losing a deal. The key is to walk away without burning bridges.
Thank you. Absolutely. You might have a buyer negotiating and the seller will not bend on their pricing or allowances, and it just seems it's overpriced, and you're like, I don't, you know, let me show you the stats. Here's what's going on for comps. I don't see the value here. But this is up to you. And they're saying, no, I don't see the value. I'm very concerned about X, Y, and Z. But when you decide not to move forward, you just say to the agent, hey, you know, please keep us in mind should, you know, things not go the way your seller's hoping they do. You know, we hope the best for them, but please let me know otherwise. I'm amazed at how they're taking another offer and things don't work out and they call you back, you know, a month down the road, a couple of weeks down the road. And it's great that your buyer can be in the position of either saying, I found something I love better, or I'm still looking and I would love to go back and look at that house. And because you kept in touch with them and maybe emailed every so often, like if we lose an offer and it's multiple offers, I ask how long was your due diligence period, 7 or 10 days. I plug it into my calendar and I'm looking at it. That is one thing I will say that has always saved me. I use Google Gmail, and I take all the dates from the important dates in the contract form. Everybody's seen that, right? Where you list all your dates. Does everybody know that form?
Yes.
Okay, let me just make sure, because this form makes you, when you are either you have an offer accepted, or you are receiving an offer and you guys come to agreement, the reminder of important dates in the purchase and sale agreement. This is what I love about this. You've got to put in everything. So it forces you to sit down with your offer in your hand, highlight all the important stuff and write it out. Who's the buyer? Who's the seller? Who's the listing agent? And put their contact info there. Who's the selling agent and their contact information. And then come down here. When is our binding? When is the earnest money? What else is due? The due diligence period, the appraisal, everything you need to do. And then I love these here. Other. Seller to leave house, room clean. Seller to leave refrigerator and terrace level. Whatever your special stipulations are, put those in other, so when you send this out, you've got a recap for everybody. Then this thing can be this could be if you keep your stuff in a binder or you've put it online in Dotloop, this is one of the things in there. So you ever have a question, here's where we are, and then you've got the buyer, the lender, the seller, and the closing attorney. All the contact information, ship it out to everybody. That's step one. My step two is then I sit down with all these dates and we go into Gmail and we set up all day reminders so that they come up at the top of the day. I set them up in red for Keller Williams, and I put like DD ends, 131 Main Street, FIN contingency ends, 131 Main Street. So that every week when you're looking at your calendar of what is going on, you can look across the top and you see your closings, all of your deadlines. You will never forget a date. And you probably won't think to do that until you have forgotten the date. Once again, as I say to my kids, learn from my mistakes. You go out and make new ones and then come back and share what you learned. That's what I would love to hear. I made a righteous error. Here's how I fixed it. Here's what I learned. That is the best day ever. I've already made this mistake. Don't make this one. Go make a new one.
What is that form number? What is that?
Where's that in the forms? Because I'm in Dotloop right now.
It's F264, and how I found it was I came under the GAR interactive forms. When you look under documents, you see this one down here, GAR interactive. That's where we pulled up special steps. So it's not the KW one, it's the Georgia Association of Realtor where it has everything. So that's where we pulled up special steps, and this is a reminder of important dates. And then with your clients, if you enter everything in your Google Calendar, you can invite them and they can choose. I would say, hey, I'm going to send you a Gmail invite for all of our dates. You could choose to accept them or not, but I just want you to have all those dates in your calendar as well. And then you send them that form. And I joke with them. I say, hey, some people like to hang it on the fridge and check it off each time they meet a milestone. And then you have all the milestones. So when you get through the financing contingency, congratulations, you got through the financing contingency. Congratulations, you are through due diligence. This is a great day. We hit the bottom rung of the ladder. We got 3 more to go. Make it fun. This is huge and exciting. Every time you meet a milestone, what a great day. So add that in. All right. So we're going to do a role play, but before we do the role plays, I'm going to have you do, we're going to do a quick recap where we are. So we came together today and we wanted to talk about negotiations. Who has done it before? Who forgot and didn't know they've been spending their entire life doing it? What are some of those skills? What exactly is negotiation? We got to see Josh talk about escalation clauses, multiple offers, different things that can come up. What are the common points? How about the 3 P's approach? Who remembers any of the P's? Prepare,
Plan.
present, and position. Perfect. Great eating of an elephant because nobody can remember those. Prepare, present position. I need help preparing. I need to have my options. How am I going to present this to the client? What are some of the scripts I should use? What should I be saying? Let me run those by you. How does this sound? If you were to hear this, how would you feel? Position. How are we making this work for everybody? What are we laying out? How is our position? What are strategies? We talk about the different tips, different things people do. We're going to role play next after we do this quick recap. So, see if you remember any of these. When are the two possible occurrences of negotiation during the entire process? What are the two they talked about in the book? When do you negotiate?
For the original offer?
For the original offer,
Due diligence.
and then during all your contingency dates. Yes, good job. What are some common points of negotiation? So you're going to work with a client and you're going to think about what are all the things I can do to help them win. Where might you be negotiating? And I'll give you a hint.
The price.
So price,
Terms.
terms, closing date, closing costs,
Conveyances.
Closing time.
closing time.
The conveyances.
Conveyances, what's staying, and then on page 7, what do you have?
Special stipulations.
Special stipulations. Great, 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 great. All right. 3-piece approach we already did. How do you combat the nibbling tactic when somebody keeps nibbling and asking for more?
You do this, I'll do this if you do that.
Perfect. Nibble back, nibble back. All right, stop it from happening by nibbling back. You guys did good. Anybody have a question before we do a role play? Anybody have anything that they're thinking about, or anything that I talked about and didn't share enough on, or?
My question is more like, can you just show us the path to get to all the contracts?
Oh,
I go all kind of different ways. I don't know how I end up there. but-
so to get to the contracts, so I do the mykw.kw.com and come in here and I do start my transactions. So then you're pulling up your loops, and now I'm in Stacy's loop. So this is, I don't want to be in her stuff, so I'm going to go in this test one. So I just have my loops. Let me pull back here, and it shows what's active. And let me get to the home screen. This is everything pulled up. All right. Oops. So this is what it looks like when you do the mykw.kw.com and you come into my transactions and you see all the loops, all the things that you're doing. So then once you're in here, you will pull up one of your loops, like this, for example, and my dot loop I did not open here. I just want to find to see if she has a test. I will tell you, I always do this too. Set up a test loop. Just call it test. Send stuff to somebody. Let them send stuff to you. Go back and forth. What does it look like when our clients get it? The reason that's so important, now you've got somebody who's having a hard time signing and you need something signed in an hour. And they're saying, well, I don't see anything. Well, if you looked in the right corner, do you see where it says begin signing now? Do you see where it says confirm signing at the bottom? Where is it located? What does it look like? If you don't share a document with your partner here, you're going to be like, I don't know what it looks like. I mean, that to me is huge. So when you come in here and you look at your folder, you're going to go up to add a document right in your loop, and it asks you a template, or is it an email, or is it somewhere on your PC? When you go into templates, everything has been built in here, and at the very bottom it says GAR for Georgia Association of Realtor Interactive Documents. So you're going to go to GAR documents. These are all of the documents that you can search on. So like if you typed in purchase and sale and hit enter, you could find here's assignment, commercial purchase and sale, a condo purchase and sale, anything that has the word purchase and sale in it. So until you get to know your forms, that's going to be the best way. But this is where we found that reminder of important dates. It's obviously much better when you spell it right. It's easier to search on something. But here's the reminder of important dates, and then you just click on it, copy it in, say okay, and you've got it right there to pull up, look at, play with. You could import all your people and import your data, save it as a PDF, send it from .loop, send it as a PDF through email, whatever way you're doing it. So does that help? It's a great place. Pull up your special steps, look at some of the contracts, read the protect ones so you know what you're going to want to give to your buyers. Those are wonderful. Go through your purchase and sale, seller's disclosure, and community association disclosure. Those are the ones you use all the time because they're part of every contract in the counteroffer. And the one thing with the counteroffer, a lot of times it's hard to imagine or you forget. So you write your first offer and it's all here. So you offered 200. The counteroffer is only changes to the original offer. So it says, here's what I said originally, we're going to replace it and we're going to go with this. So then they reply with another counter and your folks say, I'm still not comfortable, I need to do another counter. What happens with this next counter coming in? Okay, so you did a counter, the other seller did a counter, and now you're countering back. It always goes back to the only thing that matters, the purchase and sale. So if there's anything you're agreeing to in counter 1 or counter 2, when you're writing counter 3, you've got to write those in. So, because think about it, how hard, and it used to be like this years ago, would it be that every time you were in a counter offer, you had to say, okay, that happened in counter offer 1. Let me go back and make sure it's there. Okay, it's there. Well, we're in counter offer 3. What happened in 2? I don't remember. So they said, no more. Every time you write a counter offer and there's agreement, you include everything that changed. So you're always going back to the biggest and most important document, the purchase and sale, but anything that's changed has to be recapped. So let's say you send this out and the closing date is shortened. Then they come back and they don't fill in the closing date being shortened. In your next one, you're going to say, hey, we've got to make sure the closing date is this date. That's how we wanted it. Or are you guys saying you assumed it, or are you saying you didn't want to do that? So your counter offers have to be complete and all-inclusive of any changes, always looking back at the purchase and sale. And we've had people say, oh, well, I was going to write that in counter offer 2, but I thought, we kind of talked about it and alluded to it. It's the final counter offer. That's the only one that matters. The one everyone agrees to and is bound, meaning signed off and agreed to. So 1 and 2 have to flow into 3.
So at the end of the day, when you submit that, say, the 1 and 2 go away anyway, right? So, yeah. So that makes sense.
Right. And 1 and 2 will go away when you submit your offer. You've got your purchase and sale. I always like to put the counter offers at the very front, because otherwise people look at the purchase and sale and go, oh, $300,000, and they've already, their mind's gone and they're already working on something else. When the counter's offers up here, $310,000, they know that. And then that's the information you share as a listing agent with the appraiser, because he might have only gotten the purchase and sale, and they might have put a low ball offer in first. You need to make sure he knows that through the counter offer, the offer was $345. Not this low ball, let's see what they do offer.
So it's another sheet that says counter offer.
Thank you, yes. That form, look, yes, excellent question, and I apologize for that. What you're gonna look at when you add your document is going to be, I'm gonna hop into templates and GAR really quick here. And you're gonna look at counter offer. And here it is, the counter offer to, or the modification of the unaccepted original offer. So they tell us that in our forms, but none of us read it and remember it. They're telling you, you are not gonna be seeing, this goes back to the purchase and sale. I just see so many people struggle and accidentally make an error here. So it even tells you here, previous counters are rejected. Here's the relationship between the original and this one. This is what it means when you accept it. They put all that in there so we keep everybody protected. Okay?
Yeah.
Are they here?
They're hovering.
Okay, all right. So we just went through everything we've gone through. Here's some great forms. I'm gonna say, come to the team meetings or watch them. You're gonna learn so much. Ask for help. Get into coaching. Start a group of, hey, let's network together. We're all new, and let's bring some people in to help us or talk about things that we have questions on. And just know you are part of a large team. So every time you go out, never feel uncomfortable because I have a team. And remember the line. That is an excellent question, Rochelle. There's a couple ways we can handle that. Do you mind if I go back and check with my team? I'm going to come up with some possibilities for you. Does 5 o'clock work for me to get back with you?
That works great.
Yes, because no one ever said, throw me incorrect information right now. They all want the right one.
What was the dates document? I'm sorry, I've had to take a couple calls.
Important
So it's-
reminder, it's called reminder.
So R.
Reminder of important dates.
F264.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can also
type
just type
reminder.
in the word dates in
Yeah.
the search bar.
Where's the search bar?
It's a red.
That's it,
Okay.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Are you done?
Anybody, I will look forward to seeing you. We are so thrilled to have you guys here. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in and just share some of the ways to make negotiations fun. I so look forward to seeing you, talking to you, and working with y'all.
Okay, kids, no one got 100 and no one missed more than 3. So I'm very proud of you. Let's see.
Did I miss 3?
Everybody missed at least 1. Some of you were sort of 1.5. Anyway, I am going to share with you. I'm going to print copies of this. This is my personal purchase and sale boilerplate where I have highlighted all of these things. And this is based on questions. Agents come to me and say, well, my client's worried about this. I'm like, it's covered in the contract. And of course, you know, that seems to be news to them. So these questions there were things that I was really asked to, you know, explain. It's in the contract. So I'll make copies of these and give them to you tomorrow. Groovy. There's another event coming in here quickly right after this, so would appreciate. Sorry, you kind of
Trying to tell us to get
my
out of here.
news.
You gotta go home.
All right. So
You don't have to go home,
awesome.
but
Thank
you
you.
gotta-
Gotta get up out of
See
here.
you. Oh, and tomorrow I'm gonna